Good evening, everyone. I am Rajrita Nath, and I'll be your host for the evening today. Welcome to DSC OMG Day 2, and we have a series of sessions planned for you, and we're sure you have checked on the speakers that are there today. But before we set this virtual stage on fire, we have the very wonderful and the most awaited Mr. Saurabh Rajpal with us. He is the technical solutions consultant at Google, and he'll be taking the keynote session today discussing web technologies and the new superpowers of the web. Over to you.
Thank you, Rajvita, for a lovely introduction and putting me under a lot of pressure. Can we have the slides up, please? Oh, sorry. Let me share the screen. My bad. Give me a second. Slides are up now, right? Perfect. So hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I think this is very exciting times. A lot of effort has been put in by our DSCs who are graduating this year. I think it takes a huge amount of effort to come up with something remote, uh, and yeah, I think this has been wonderful. So yeah, a brief about myself. Hi everyone, I'm Saurabh Rajpal. I work as a web ecosystem consultant at Google, and what that primarily means is that I work with the top websites in India to make them performant by giving them recommendations on on how they can really make their website perform better or faster. I also work with them to make sure that they are able to convert their websites into web like progressive web apps, which can be then used just like similar to your app and build website as close as possible to the apps. Then there's something called AMP, which is AMP Accelerated Mobile Pages. It used to be just a framework a while back, but now it has certainly become an ecosystem, and I'll briefly touch base upon that, what I exactly mean with that. And I also work with the top websites to make sure that they're able to utilize the latest Chrome APIs which are being released into the market, so that it's like they're able to build some beautiful experiences for the people, for the users. And the topic of my talk for today would be superpowers of web. The reason I added 2.0 there is because I gave a similar talk when we had DSC Summit, the amazing DSC Summit last year. I had a lot of fun, and I'm sure like a lot of DSCs also had that. So thanks again for joining in, and let's get started. But one thumb of rule: every time you feel amazed, you have to shout, "We are web minions," because web can really, really, really amaze you with the capabilities that it has. And every time you feel amazed, shout out, "We are web minions." Cool. With that, we go to the first superpower of web, which is daring. Now, I don't need to explain what the meaning of daring is, but web certainly has been daring in a lot of sense, and it's not necessarily that it has been daring by choice. Sometimes it had to be like that because nobody else was taking on that initiative, or sometimes like you understand that okay, web is certainly so important that it has to be in the forefront. Uh, and I think it's commendable how web has certainly evolved like over the years. I think you all would have to agree that web has been through its journey of its own from early 90s till date, like till 2020. And it used to be just renderable on the desktops, then keep the tabs, then different font sizes, and it all survived all that based on the changing needs of the users. And not to forget that there were tons of like new technologies which kept coming, kept going. Some failed, some passed, but still web has been like still embarking on its journey. It's continuing its beautiful journey. So it's been there. It's been there like a boss. It's been daring to just stay here and never die. So coming to the some of the superpowers that web has enabled for itself is if you what you are seeing here is something which a framework called like AMP has enabled to dare and think beyond what probably we could have like thought of to even build using the AMP technologies or web technologies for that matter. What you see here on the left hand side is some emails. What you see right at the center is a story. You generally used to like building stories onto your social platforms, but who would have thought that someday this would also be possible to have a URL where you could just share the URL and somebody could land onto your web story. Then there are like ads and stuff like that. So there's a whole plethora of ecosystem which AMP as a ecosystem, as a framework, has been able to achieve and powered web to be better. So just to give you a quick example of what I was talking about, what you see here is a dynamic email which is powered by AMP. Now the beauty of this dynamic email is that all this while we have been used to seeing stale emails or emails which are static, right? Now think of it from company, like a lot of companies perspective. When they send out deals to you, when they send out, hey, rate my experience and all those kind of things, when they do all that, give me a second, guys. Yep. Sorry, guys. So, what I was saying, that just think of it this way: that if you had a lot of deals that you wanted to send out to your users, or wanted to get some feedback from the customers and stuff like that, all you need to do is you could just send a dynamic email which can reside in the inbox, and anytime a person comes back, they can still look out, check out those deals. Imagine how much capability this add in terms of personalization as well, because this is something that you could use dynamic lists and stuff like that. So all I'm trying to say here is that this has certainly changed the way web developers could also build something which they used to feel is not plausible or something which is out of their league. Uh, Again, adding on to the AMP ecosystem itself, there is something called, like, we all know that we all need ads, and like, we as users don't need ads, but when we talk about the developers, or the ones that, when we try to make our like pet project into something which is business, which gets us the monetization, then you, of course, you need to implement ads. And just like AMP, how super fast the AMP pages are, what they have done is they have introduced AMP ads as well, which loads like 5 to 6 times faster than the normal ads. Now just think of it this way: if you're already investing a lot of time in building AMP pages, which is not certainly like the right word, because it doesn't take a lot of time to build AMP pages, but in case you have already invested, but still you're not getting the benefit of performant website, because the ads that you load, they take a lot of time. With this, you kind of complete that whole circle, right? You could build your own ads as well and serve that. uh, so I think that's what I quickly wanted to cover, because I think AMP stories is something which probably you would have already heard of and I already talked about. So looking beyond AMP, I think today, if you look at the capabilities which web again can give you, is part of that is the web VR. Just imagine that you could actually build immersive web experiences through virtual reality right onto your website. So that's pretty much possible. All you need to do is like just like play around with some experimental flags in Chrome, just change them, just develop, and it will be already for you. Similar to that, there is possibility of building AR applications as well, which I'm pretty sure like a lot of you probably would have felt that web didn't have this kind of capabilities. Uh, if you remember, there was one Google search thing when you used to search for tigers, bears, and stuff like that. So this probably was leveraging that piece of it. Pretty exciting, right? Cool. And when we talk about daring, I think it's not only about web being daring. I think the web developers also very daring, because one of the common problem that usually a lot of you face is that there are tons and tons and tons of like frameworks, and this is just a sample, and there are much more. So yes, I'd say that it's not it, it's one of the common myths that you really have to be daring to start learning something on web. All you need to do is probably just focus on a few of them and start your journey with JavaScript. So this is one tip that I generally give to everyone: build your strong JavaScript as a base, and you will be a very good web developer, irrespective of whatever company requires you to work on. Cool. And with that, we come to the second superpower. which is scalable. Now, scalability is something that everybody understands from the word perspective, but still to tell it, it means that how far you can reach with web, how much expansion you could do with that. Because when you talk about, say, I don't want to take any technologies name, but when you build apps or something like that, not necessarily everybody will have those installed on their phones. But when you talk about web, if it's lying there, anybody can just reach there by a click of it, right? And that's where this becomes so much more important in current scenario, because we have so many different types of devices which are connected to internet, and each one of them is actually serving some version of the web pages in some form. uh, to give you the exact numbers, as is written here, we already have around 20 billion connected devices, and web is the only platform that reaches all of your users across all of these devices, which is like 4 billion internet users across 20 billion devices, because we all are generally keeping 2 to 3 devices at least with us. So I think with this kind of scalability, when you want to reach this kind of scalability, it's not possible without having your own website or without investing on web. And also in terms of scalability, just think of it this way, that this is something which is not only expected by, say, a developer who is a web developer, that I need to scale and all those things. But when you talk about the different technologies that a lot of us youngsters are chasing, or they are looking like the wonderful future, I think go ahead, learn all these things. Very relevant, very important to stay on top of things. But even if you have a lot of interest in web, just see that everything probably would have some flavor of web. What I wanted to mention here is that web, every technology understands the importance of web and the scale that it provides when you are building a website. So you talk about Flutter, there is something that they're introducing now for Flutter for web. It's pretty mature now, but still a long way to go. But still, it has something in it for developers, web developers. Talk about the voice applications. There is Duplex for web, which will enable the voice like assistant experience on web. And then there is like a plethora of TensorFlow libraries or machine learning that can actually be worked on or implemented on your website. So even as a web developer, there is still a chance that I can still learn all those things that I wanted to without actually changing the platform, or without losing the focus from web. And if you are an aspirant who is still struggling to figure out which is a technology that I should definitely go for, I'd say keep up with the latest technologies. That is pretty important. But I think if you are a good JS developer, the gates are open for you, especially in a country like India, where we have so many developers getting degrees every year from so many of the engineering colleges. It becomes tough to find very selected jobs in a very specific areas. So that's where, if you are a JS developer these days, you can even become a backend developer by just knowing JavaScript. Cool. And with that, we come to the superpower 3. Sorry for the wrong number 2 there, but yeah, it's a superpower number 3, which is controllable. Now, when we say controllable, what we mean that it gives you an extra layer of control with you when you're talking about websites. Because imagine, again, I'll take the example of apps. When you talk about apps, you release a version. Some people download that, and then you somehow feel that there is something wrong on the app. You need to change that. So you upgrade or update your app, and then you depend on the mercy of people to download that, until unless like you have created a force update kind of a scenario, which is not very user friendly, to be very honest. Now with this, a lot of companies struggle a lot of times in order to deliver the latest thing that they really wanted to deliver. And that's where, if you have, say, a website which you have converted into a progressive web app. And when I say building a progressive web app, it doesn't mean that it's a different plethora of like application building process that you have to learn through. It's more like, it's not a framework, it's not a tool that you need to learn. It's more like you convert a website into a progressive web app by implementing few of the things which makes it more web-like. For example, imagine if your app could actually get notifications. Imagine if it could work in an offline mode, like if you could cache few of the things, and if you could add it to the home screen directly. from where the users could actually just click on the icon and just land onto your experience. So with this trusted web activity, or web in play as we call it, you could actually wrap your PWA within a TWA, and actually release it into the Play Store. Now, the biggest advantage that this gives you is it gives you more control, because whatever content you're showing within your app is like a website which you can modify and deploy, and you don't really need to release newer app versions for that, because website is changed, it will reflect directly here. So basically, you get more control there. And this is exactly the experience that I was talking about. So Oyo Lite, I don't know if you would have downloaded that or not, but there were like millions of downloads for this app. It was under 1 MB. Just imagine, it was under 1 MB, because it was doing was running a immersive full PW experience within the Android shell, and there were a lot of downloads which happened even for the tier 2, tier 3 cities where internet is a problem. And then the experience that they could deliver was like brilliant. So just to tell you that. Now coming to a lot of other control things that you could do with this is, like, there were already a lot of APIs, a lot of capabilities, like say background sync. You could make a website work with USB. You could do some push messages. You could have credentials, file reading, payments. All those capabilities were still there, which brought you into more control of how the users use it. But this is existing, and now with the ongoing developments, there are more things which have come into the picture. For example, contact picker API. I don't think I would have ever imagined that my website could actually be capable of picking up contacts from my phone, or directly reading SMS, so that my OTP regressions are lesser. And then there are a plethora of more things which gives more control to you as a web developer, in the way that you could build your web app as close as possible to a native app that you probably would have always imagined to. So in summary, since we are almost coming to the closer of the time, so in summary, web is a daring, scalable, and controllable, meaning it's a DSC. Guys, the myth has been broken. The the mystery has been solved. So I just wanted to say that web is a DSC, and that's our OMG movement that we've just created. I just wanted to signify that and tie the story together so that it becomes very relevant for DSC OMG, the great effort which our DSCs have done. And I think courtesy that we can say that web को लगता है कि अपुन निज भगवान है, because it has so much capability, it has scale, it can enable you to build anything, and you are totally in control. Yeah, I think let's shout at our individual places. I know this is really sad that we have to take the virtual events now where we can't interact directly, but let's shout, yay, we are Webinians. And with that, I come to the end of the slides, and I'm open to answer any of the questions that you may have. Let me look at the live comments.
Thank you, sir. It has been an amazing session and
Thank you.
the correct way to have this energy set for this evening. We'll just check
Sure.
if there are some questions now.
Sure. I'm amazed to see like how people are saying we are Webinians. I see that energy going through. So yeah, we are Webinians. Could you please shed light on ML models being integrated in websites and apps using TensorFlow.js, using which even a web developer can use to invoke ML without actually being well versed with it? So yeah, Samad, I think that's a great question. So if you're talking about ML specifically, I know a lot of young developers are afraid to get into that zone where they need to build ML models, and that's where TensorFlow already has some pre-built models which you could directly leverage onto your websites. Like similar to how you import jQuery or any of the JavaScript files, you need to similarly download those models directly into your website by using the script tab. And once you have that loaded, you could directly start using those things. For example, one of the ML models that I remember was to do the face detection. Now, what it does, it forwards me the array of coordinates for eyes, nose, mouth. Now imagine if I had to implement something like whenever I do a O or a D, it appears on the screen as D, or does some action. It is all possible using the existing models itself. You don't need to learn anything extra. Hope that answers. Anything else you have? Rajita, would you like to like highlight
Um,
any of the questions?
yeah, sir, we're just going ahead with that, but yes, sir, another one.
React or Angular or Vue, what is the best framework to start learning for a beginner front end? Our Manoj framework nahi sikhata आपस में बैर करना. That's the thing. Every framework has its own pros and cons, and I think it depends a lot on what suits you, right? And like every different framework has different style of coding. Because if you talk about React, I've generally seen a lot of backend developer usually used to love React. For Vue, it's more CSS driven. So I think it's a style that suits you. But I think as a beginner, as you said in front end, start learning with JavaScript. Frameworks would be easy then if you have clarity and clear in your thought process what JS is. Hope that helps. If you feel any of the answers are not like not up to the mark, or that's the wrong way to do it, but like if you feel there was a follow up required, feel free to reach out to me on I am Saurabh Rajpal. So just want to say that. Anything else we have? I know there are tons of live comments which are going around. I could start picking up randomly, but would wait for you to highlight. दंगे कराओगे यार मनोज कौतुक कुंदन. Dheeraj Lalwani says project based learning or course based learning for JavaScript. I'd say project based. Like even like I'd say pick up a course which teaches in that way, which picks up a project and then walks you through it. But I'll be very honest that whatever whatever way you learn, till the time you're actually working on a project which makes you stuck at a point, you won't be able to explore the nitty gritties of it and won't become a good developer. So of course, I think in the long run, project based learning helps, but maybe pick up a course which has like which is teaching that way.
So I think we are done with the Q&A now. Thank you for
Sure.
your time and effort. It has been amazing to have you with us.
Thank you. It's been equally wonderful for sure. Cool. Thank you.
Uh, so now, after Saurav, we have a server-side developer, a solutions architect, a DevOps system admin, course instructor at Udemy and Renewal, and an avid tech blogger. Yes, I'm talking about Angad Sharma. His accolades up his stream are never-ending. He's the tech lead at Culture VIT chapter, the tech core committee member at Hacker Earth and RCPL, the core committee member at Facebook Developer Circles, and is currently totally head over heels over Golang and domain-driven languages. In fact, he is also the person behind this amazing polling software Hermes that we've been using at DSC OMG, which you would probably better known as poll.dscomg.com. This session is about Deno. It's a new runtime for TypeScript and JavaScript and is often called the Node.js killer. So this session will take you through the basics of Deno as well as why it has gained this popularity and momentum. Over to you, Angad.
Thank you, Rajrita. Lovely introduction. I hope you guys can hear me. I'll just screencast right now. Okay, I'm sharing my screen. Okay, if that just pops up. Yeah. So hi guys, I hope you guys can hear me. I'll be sharing my entire screen because I'll be switching through code and the presentation in between. So a bit about myself. I am a technical member at DSC VIT. I have been connected with DSCs since 2017 and we've done a lot of amazing work over the years. We've worked on a lot of projects and as she said that yes, I am crazy about Go right now. So you might be thinking that why am I talking about Deno? Well, Node.js was one of the first languages I started out, and I've been seeing a lot of war over, a lot of contempt culture over which backend language to use, which not to use. A lot of people argue that Go is the best or Node is the best, but in the end, it's just about what. In the end, it's just about something that you need to do that can be accomplished by one thing or the other. So I am a huge proponent of Node.js, and coming to Node.js. So before moving ahead with this presentation, as Rajrita pointed out, I want to give a huge shout out to my team who helped build the Hermes polling application. where you can reach it at pool.dscomg.com. So a huge shout out to you guys, Hisham, Prakhar, Shravani, Ubaid, who spent countless hours getting the thing deployed and up and running and everything. So good job, guys. So you guys might be using the poll thing as it's going on, as the whole presentation is going on. So let me move forward and let's talk about Node. So Node, there's nothing new about Node, but just to give you guys a brief history. So earlier, what used to happen was that JavaScript was used for DOM manipulation in the browsers until one day Ryan Dahl just came and said, what if we can use Node.js? What if we can use JavaScript in the backend? Is that possible? So then he created a runtime for JavaScript called Node. And it's been used very extensively these days. As you can see, there are already about 85 billion downloads of NPM packages only last month. And Twitter uses Node.js, which is about 5.5 billion monthly visits, and websites like Alibaba, PayPal, and BBC, they all use Node.js. So the reason why I took some time to talk about Node is because I keep on getting doubts that is Node.js going to replace Dino or something like that. Well, to tell you that I've been following the Dino project for quite some time now. I still remember the first time I got introduced to it. I saw a talk that Ryan Dahl gave about a year ago, and since then, Dino has gained a lot of popularity. I was aware of Dino about 8 months before, but a month or two earlier, I was just spammed with messages and notifications about everyone just writing about Dino and writing blogs, preparing videos. It had about 66,000 stars, so it just surged up in popularity. So as Node.js is a runtime for JavaScript, Dino is another runtime for JavaScript and TypeScript. There are two key differences here. Firstly, Dino puts TypeScript as the first class citizen when it's doing something. So basically, when you're using Dino, you would want to use TypeScript as your coding language. And firstly, that. Secondly, Dino adds a lot of safety. So if you guys have worked with Node, you guys know some of the things that it's not very well known for, which we'll discuss here. But then, in this series we're going to be talking about, is Dino there yet, or can we get started with Dino? So to answer the second question, firstly, yes, we can get started with Dino. Secondly, I would like to start by why. Why would we want to start with Dino? What is wrong with the current system we have? If there are about a million total NPM packages and 85 billion people downloading them, there's Twitter running them, so many good people, good companies supporting Node.js, then what is wrong with it? So let's go and see. Yeah. So node dependencies are bulky. So how node dependencies work is that it uses a node package manager, which downloads all of your dependencies into a folder called node modules. And let me just head over to my terminal right here. And I have the source code of the live polling application right here. So it is the same thing that is deployed on our servers. And if I just ls into my node modules, you can see that there are so many dependencies over here. And if I just tree into it, tree is a command which is used to recursively print out all of the files in a particular directory. You will be able to see that there is a lot of dependency when it comes to Node.js. It means that firstly, Node.js becomes harder to distribute because you know that Node.js uses the package.json, and package.json is essentially a file which contains a list of all of your dependencies, and all of these dependencies have sub-dependencies and sub-sub-dependencies and much more things like that. So whenever you're deploying something, you are downloading all of these dependencies and sub-dependencies into a node module folder. So just a couple of weeks ago, I was helping out a friend with a project in Node.js, and we ended up downloading about 500 MBs of node modules. The node module directory itself was 500 MBs. So I was baffled at the fact that how bulky Node.js dependencies can actually be. Yeah. So that was the first drawback of Node.js. Let's go down. Node.js breaks browser compatibility. Now, why do I say this? A lot of you guys have used JavaScripts, and you know that when you want to import something in JavaScript, you just use an import statement. Well, Node.js did away with all of that when it came with the require thing. So if I go to my index.js, you'll be able to see that everything is a const, something is equal to require the package name. So this thing cannot be run on the browsers, and thus it breaks browser compatibility. So Ryan Dahl, who was the creator of Node.js, is also the creator of Dino and is a huge proponent of Dino over Node.js. even though he still supports Node. And it's his words. He says that Node.js was not meant to be run on the browsers, but Deno is designed to be run both on the browsers and in the backend. So this is one thing that he wanted out of a runtime, and I think he's doing very well. Now, let's go a bit down and see. Node is inconsistent. Well, that is not exactly true, is it? Let's find out. So Node.js is a runtime whose primary first-class citizen is JavaScript. And JavaScript in itself is not type-safe at all. So if you want to see what I'm talking about, let me enter my Node REPL right here. And let's see what this means. 0 equal to empty string. This is true. Now, of course, if you want to check the type, you can add a triple equal to. Now, let's look at some more inconsistencies. Just a quick thing. Yeah. So object plus object means empty string, and object plus, array plus array means empty string, and array plus object means something like this. So these are some of the inconsistencies which could be dealt away with if we used a type-safe system like TypeScript. So although Node itself isn't inconsistent, but what it's used to run is inconsistent. And since Deno is a huge proponent of TypeScript, so Deno +1 Deno and 0 on Node in this particular case. Now let's move forward and look at, Node.js is unsafe and vulnerable. So how many of you guys have used the .env package in Node.js? I mean, almost everyone has. So basically, if for some of you who haven't, .env is a package. What it does is it reads a .env file in your particular directory, and then it injects all of those secrets into your runtime, the Node.js runtime, so that your app can use it. Now, who gave my Node.js application access to do that? I didn't give Node.js access to read my files. I didn't give Node.js access to inject something into my particular runtime itself. And I certainly didn't give Node.js access to create or read some of the files in my file system. Well, if you are downloading a Node.js code from the browser in the dark shades of the internet, or even a simple GitHub repository, and you're running it, you never know what it's doing to your system. It might be creating junk files. It might be reading unnecessary files. You have a file called /etc/shadow, I think, on Linux system, which stores all of your hashed passwords and everything. It could very well read that file and store it in a database. So you never really know what your Node.js code is doing. And to Randall, that was unacceptable. So Randall said, yes, why not create a system which actually asks the users that here is a permission I want. If I want to run .env, I want access to read files. I want access to inject those secrets in my runtime, and I want my app to do whatever it's wanting to do, and you have the control in your hand. You need to give the permission. One more thing is that, let's take a look at our code here. So if I go down, then in this particular program, what I'm doing is I'm listening to an HTTPS port, and I'm also connecting to a socket server. Now, as you guys know that HTTP or HTTPS, when you start a server in Node.js or Express, it binds a particular port in your particular system, right? Now, who gave it access to do so? Now, I know that you need to be root to bind to ports which are less than 1024. And for greater than 1024, you don't need that much access. But what if it were some malicious code who was, let's say, mining cryptocurrency on your system and syncing the results with a central table? You would never know, right? Because it already has access to bind to any port you want. And you have no control over if you can allow that or not. Well, Deno does that for you. So a lot about Node.js. Now, let us enter the Denoland and talk about Deno a bit. So in addition to being a runtime, safe and secure runtime for TypeScript and JavaScript, yes, in fact, Deno runs JavaScript as well. Deno is a compilation of three languages. So firstly, TypeScript or JavaScript, where you write your code. Secondly is the Chrome's V8 engine, which is of course required for running scripts in the backend. And thirdly, it uses the Rust programming language for some system calls using the Tokyo event loop. So if you want to learn more about it, it's TOKI, like the city, Tokyo event loop. Yeah. So let's enter the Denoland and let's see some of the powers that we get in Deno that we don't get otherwise in Node. So I'm just gonna keep this. Let me just go to my directory where I have all of my work. Yeah. Okay. So if I ls into my project right here, I already have a project made for Deno. And what this does is, this is just a model view controller template. And it uses the Oak server I mean, instead of the Express server, it uses the Oak server. And it uses the MongoDB drivers for Deno, which are still a bit unstable right now, but it will do for this particular video. So I've written all of this code in TypeScript, and you can use this code as your MVC template. I have it up on GitHub, and you can check it out later. So one thing that you notice right off the bat is the imports. Yes, you've got the ES6 imports, and this is a very different syntax. This means that you don't have to necessarily explicitly download packages on your particular system. Whenever your Deno code is running, it will look at all of the import statements and it will cache it in your local system. So this gives you a lot of power. You don't have to maintain important files like package.json or package.log.json or anything of that sort. You don't even have to maintain a node modules or something like that. Just enter the URL of the particular thing. And you guys, if you guys do Golang, then you might find this a little bit familiar. So this is one thing which is very awesome. And it also means that you can use Deno in the browser, because a lot of imports in the browser happen through your traditional URLs when you use CDNs or something like that. The second thing is that Deno, when you're using Node.js, you use process.env to fetch environment variables from the runtime of Node.js. In Deno, you don't have to do that. So basically, Deno has its own instance of protected environment variables, which is contained in the deno.env. So in this particular file, I'm using the .env module, and all of these modules are hosted on Deno, their own version tracking system and everything. And of course, this code might be very familiar to you guys who have been using or creating backends and writing them in Node.js. So nothing special about it. The only special thing is that, yes, it's written in TypeScript. It's type safe. And I'm just doing the same things. I'm just connecting to the database, importing my routes, starting things like that. And this is my project structure. So these are my routes. Nothing special here. Database connection string. Again, nothing special. So this is, so you can't use modules that were created for Node.js in Deno. So let's say that a Mongoose is a very popular ODM for writing MongoDB functions and everything. But you can't use that in Deno because Deno has its own sets of packages and everything, which are hosted in deno.land/x/the package name. Now, you guys might be wondering, okay, yeah, so let me just start the server. Now, this is a very huge command. Let me just show you guys what this does. So I'm saying Deno run --allow net --allow plugin unstable, allow read, allow write, allow env. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what each of these means. So --allow net is telling the runtime that yes, you have access to open a port. We need this because we need our server to be running in our backend. --allow plugin, allow unstable, and allow write is for MongoDB. Still, it's still in a very unstable state, so we have to use the --unstable also. And --allow read is for our .env because it actually has to read the .env, and it has to allow environment also to inject those secrets, whatever it reads from the .env, to the runtime itself. Now, if I just run my app.ts without any of these arguments, it's gonna throw an error. It's gonna say permission denied, read access, write access, or something like that. So this means that when you download a code from somewhere, you can be assured that without giving your explicit permission, you don't have any worries. You don't have to think about people mining cryptocurrency in your backend or something like that. You have full control over what your application does. You can dive into the code and see why it's requiring the read permission, why it's requiring the write permission. And that is the crux of Deno over Node.js. So let me just allow all the permissions and start it. And it got started. So let me just head over to Postman and show you guys a quick thing that, yes, this is working. This is actually a blog API. So if you guys have, if we have time, then I can walk you guys through the whole code and everything. So rest assured, this particular thing is working. And let's talk about performance a bit. So the guys at Deno, the developers at Deno are focused a lot over performance. Now they've seen that firstly, Deno takes some time to start up because it compiles at first go. It compiles your TSC and it runs TSC directly. So if you were to write TypeScript in, let's say, 2019, 2018, the problem you would face was that you had to specify a particular compile command so that you can compile all of your TypeScript to JavaScript, and then you ran the JavaScript inside the Node.js. There wasn't any way to directly run your TypeScript inside your Node.js runtime without compilation. So that required a lot of time and some additional build scripts added to your package.json. But Deno does away with all of that. You don't have to compile it to JavaScript to run it in the Deno runtime. You can run TypeScript directly as it was meant to be run. So this is one thing. So the first time you start a Deno application, it's gonna compile and start it. So the first time might require some time, as it will download and cache all of your packages too. But all of the subsequent times, it's gonna be very fast. And some performance benchmarks were done on the Deno's native HTTPS library, and it proved that Deno was faster than your Node Express server, your traditional Node Express server, but not by that much. And development is still being done to make Deno more efficient, but Deno is certainly more efficient than Node.js, if not more stable. And it's not stable than Node.js because it's still under very heavy development. As a matter of fact, about a month ago or 1.5 months ago, I was trying out the Oak server, OAK, the Oak server for Deno, and it just broke. For no reason, it broke. It was throwing a series of errors, and I couldn't figure out what was happening. So I went over to the repository and I created an issue, and I said that, guys, this is breaking and I need help with this. Can you guys help me out? And I think the next day or the day after that, I got a reply from those guys. They're like, "Oh my OMG, this version breaks. Just try this particular version instead. It'll work." And yes, indeed, that particular version worked. But and since that time, they fixed the master version of the Oak package. So I found that very amazing. I found that the community around Deno has grown to the point where everyone is developing something or the other for Deno. And I was talking with some of my community members to make a gRPC or a protobuf package for Deno, and everyone is talking about it. Everyone is excited for it. But in midst of all of that excitement, there is also danger. So let me just head over. Yeah, there is also a danger of people thinking that Node.js is going to die, a danger of people thinking that Deno is the Node.js killer. Well, none of these words came out of Ryan Dahl. As a matter of fact, he said that the support for Node.js is still going to go on, and they're still going to be working faster than ever. And if you work with some of the NPM packages, you've seen how good the development of Node.js community really is. So if you guys have any vulnerabilities in your code, they get instant updates and patches. And if you've configured something like a dependabot on your repository, then you get pull requests all the time. Yeah, to the point of someone getting annoyed. But yeah, packages are very easily deprecated and very easily patched as well. So Node.js support isn't going anywhere. Node.js is not going to die. All of the websites that are running Node.js will keep on running Node.js. And Deno is not going to replace Node.js anytime soon. I mean, in the near future, it might 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the line, it might come close to Node.js, but it won't replace the crux of Node.js because you've got so many companies backing Node.js, so many serverless lambdas being deployed using Node.js as their workers, something like that. And Rust has a higher chance of replacing C than Node.js, than Deno replacing Node.js. So Node.js isn't going anywhere. And yeah, to move forward, you guys can reach me out at github.com/load balancer. Yes, this obscure little string is actually load balancer. And you can also reach me on Twitter or on any social media, Instagram, as the same thing, only lowercase, load balancer. And you can head over to our cool website, dscvit.com, and you can get the source code of this particular talk at this particular URL, cut.it/DenoMVC. And you can kind of use that template any way you want. And in addition to being a backend developer and doing events and everything, I am also a huge fan of writing blogs. So you can head over to my blogging website, which is loadbalancer.tech. And I'm also a fan of creating courses. So you guys can check out some of my courses on Udemy. I have a course on Get Going where DSC VIT was a co-instructor. And I have a new course coming up, which is related to Svelte.js. And that's going to be launched by the end of this month. So hope you guys check that out also. And let's move on to questions. Let's see if someone has any questions.
Hi, Angad. So we have some questions for you. We'll have them displayed on the screen right here so that it becomes easy for you to pick those up and answer.
Okay. Okay, someone asks, I often get depend about PRs on my commits when I use Node.js. There are security issue notifications along with vulnerabilities. Could you shed light why such things, and can Dino tackle it? Yeah, surely. So even the creators of Node.js, they noticed that yes, indeed, packages were getting deprecated faster than packages are getting made. So a lot of issues were opened on a lot of packages, and that was due to the constraints of the Node.js runtime and the safety concerns that came with it. So the creators just decided that yes, we can go on and move on to Dino. The thing is that getting security issues on Dino might be tougher than getting security issues on Node.js because Dino is like a sealed runtime, and I might argue that it's more secure than even Docker itself because you need root access to run Docker, and Docker is open on some ports, and you can always hack it. But then Dino actually explicitly asks the users for permission while doing something. Now, yes, if a user gave permission to write a file somewhere, and if someone exploited that, then that's a different thing. But then when you're running Dino on your system, you have at least that much confidence that whatever you're doing, you know about it. You know what it's doing. You know what you want it to do, and you can tell the community about it also. So Dino promotes open source, and your code will be open source, so people will actually be able to see why you require read access or why you require write access. And I think this is a good first step against proprietary software where people hide a lot of their code base. It's going to be tougher with Dino because because you're gonna get permission errors.
We have a few more coming up, so yeah, we'll just keep those in screen now.
Almost every Dino code will require allownet to start a server. Then what prevents packages from misusing open source? Okay, so not really, not everything you write in Dino will require allownet because let's say you have an application, let's say you got a Telegram bot server or something like that, or you got any worker or any Lambda, it might not require the particular permissions to bind to a particular code. And also keep in mind that Dino was also made to keep browser compatibility in mind. So one day when we're running our Dino runtime in our browsers and everything, there's no need for us to actually give it the allownet permission. So every decision that the Dino development community did was keeping the browser in mind as well.
We have just one more question now, and then I guess we'll wrap it up.
How can to overcome drawback of asynchronous programming models in Node.js? Okay, so one thing is that Dino relies heavily on async and await, and they don't like promises that much. So firstly, use more of async await than your promises. And if you are getting a callback error, then even async awaits helps with that also. So when Node.js was in its initial stages, people were like, "Oh, I'm getting this callback error. There's so much code. My code is like this. It's very embedded and something like that." So they came up with a promise.all method where you can bunch up a couple of promises. You can enter that in a promise.all array, and it can run all of those promises and return all of those results in an array. But then they took one step extra, and then they came up with the async await model where you get to decide when you get to decide what to do when a particular thing returns. So I think using async and await would lead to overcoming a lot of asynchronous programming models where development is concerned.
Thanks, Angad. I think that has been an amazing session with you. And thank you for introducing this amazing platform to us and also your resources. I'm sure multiple people from here are going to come back to you, reach out to you. And thanks once again.
Thank you for having me. I hope you guys had fun.
Yeah.
Best of luck.
So now we have two absolutely indispensable people in the world of tech. Uh, as you've correctly guessed it, Bharat Agarwal and Vrijraj Singh. So Bharat is a full stack developer who loves to develop tools, plays with software and its security is basically his passion. He is an active contributor at GDGX GitHub organization where he is actively working in the team of Aura app. And along with him, we have Vrijraj Singh. He is the Google developer expert for web technologies and is the community organizer of GDG Jalandhar Punjab. He has countless number of talks, sessions, and workshops, and has been a favorite amongst all of us always. He's also developed the Aura app for GDGX community and its management website. This session is Web plus Firebase. This session will be about Firebase services which we can use in a web application. Over to you guys.
Yeah. Thank you, Rajita, and thank you, DSC OMG team, for inviting us. Hi, I am Bharat Agarwal. I'm a full stack developer and core team member at DSC Chandigarh University. I'm also active contributor of GDGX for Aura app project and developer at GD Jalandhar. Hope you all are safe and taking care of yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Vrijraj, Google developer expert for web technologies and Firebase. And also I'm leading GDG Jalandhar community in Punjab region. And today we are going to talk about Firebase for web. So when I talk about student life, a student have to do a lot of things. Sometimes you could have to feel like an entrepreneur and you had an idea and wanted to build an application or a solution. But they don't know how to start and what technology stack they can select, whether it can be related to front end, back end, or database. But somehow you decided the stack and then start implementing your idea and then completed your coding part. There might be some issue related to security, code implementation, managing database, or making it easy to accessible to all users. Then there is a solution or a unified solution you can use to improve your user experience and solve all these problems. So that's why Firebase came into the cinema hashtag. So what is a Firebase? So Firebase is a development platform that provides developers with a lot of tools and services to help them to develop high quality and high scalable application. Even you can use Firebase to grow their user bases. Also, you can earn more benefits or profits in terms of in Firebase. You don't need to manage the infrastructure like business logic. Firebase will take care of all the things. So Firebase mission is to help the developers succeed. Firebase is a cross-platform. You can use Firebase for iOS, Android, web, C++. Even you can use Unity for the game development. So Firebase is divided into three main categories of tools with specific goals. So it helps you to build better application by making complex coding experience easier. And also you can improve your app quality by catching issues early and fixing them quickly. And then you can grow and engage your users by understanding how other people are using it and engage with them in meaningful way. As you can see here, there are almost 25 plus different products and services within a Firebase. So now Bharat will talk about Firebase for web.
Thank you, Vrijraj. Today we'll be talking about Firebase services and products which a web developer can use. So let's see it. As a web developer, we can build apps with Firebase authentication, Firebase cloud storage, Firebase cloud file store, cloud functions, and many other things. So don't worry, we'll deep dive it each and every one. So we'll see it. So one of the hardest thing to get correct in an application is security. right? So Firebase authentication is an out-of-the-box authentication system that optimize your users and gives your users a best experience so that they can log in into your application and perform some actions. So Firebase authentication works with a number of different third-party identity providers such as Facebook, Google, Microsoft, GitHub, and you can use custom email and password or mechanism also. And if you don't want someone to log in, but you should have some ID and the things, then you can anonymously log in. You can anonymously take the users logged in into the account, and even you can use the phone number for the verification part. Once the user sign in with one of these services, Firebase assign that a record within its system and assign a unique ID to each and every user. So now we'll see how the Firebase authentication code look like. So here is an example to create a user with email and password. So what I did here, I defined two variables, the one with the email and other is a password. For signing up with email and password, we have to use create user with email and password method, which we get from the Firebase SDKs, which takes two parameters. The first one is email and the another one is password. And then it will return a promise. So you can use that promise. It will have some data like user ID and other stuff. You can use those in the different places. So now we'll see how the Cloud Firestore and the things work. So basically Cloud Firestore is a database tool that allows you to group data using document collection structure. The data is stored in and synchronized between users and devices at global scale using a cloud hosted NoSQL database. Basically Cloud Firestore is a NoSQL database, so there's no need to create some tables and the things. And it also supports some basic queries in addition to the access directly. Like you can group, you can just like you can apply the where clauses and other things. The most importantly, Cloud Firestore will automatically scale your applications as your app becomes more popular. And additionally, the machine will be added automatically to your project whenever you require. So you don't need to worry about falling to support your users and your services will be down and nothing and something like that. It will also provide access to offline storage, like it will cache your data into the local storage and you can serve from there. No need to request again and again to the server. So let's see how a database Firestore code look like. So this is a simple example to add a data in the Cloud Firestore. So before talking about code, I would like to mention that Cloud Firestore stores the data in collection and in the form of collection and documents. So basically each collection can have multiple documents and each document have data in form of field, which is a key and value, key pair value. So in the code, basically you can see the code snippet. I have defined a database reference, which is firebase.firestore, and then define the collection named users, and then add will insert the data into database, which is a collection called users, and it will generate an ID. And what this piece of code do, it will return me a promise. That promise contains document reference, which is a basic ID and other stuffs which you can use to show and manipulate the things to users. And you can also use like this object anywhere in your JavaScript. While Cloud Firestore is a great, right? So it is not only a solution to implement or storing the data in your Firebase. The Firebase real-time database uses a simple JSON tree structure to store and access the data. It's a lightweight than Cloud Firestore. It still offers many of advantages such as real-time syncing between the devices, offline support, and scalability. It also provides scalability, of course. All of the Google services provide scalability. You don't need to worry about the things. And additionally, Firebase real-time database supports the availability to know when user connected to the database and which user connected to the database. So you don't need to create some external services to know whether the user is connected to the database or not. So Firebase will take care of all these things. So let's see example how a Firebase real-time database look like. So in this example, what I created, I define a variable, which is actually my name. I just named it anyway. And after that, I created an object which stores that name as my name. And there are two methods to insert the data in cloud in the real-time database, there is a set method and there is a push method. Set method will override the data and push method will add another data. Like in JSON, there is an array and we keep on pushing the data. And set will override that existing JSON data. So preferred is to use a push instead of set. Although the real-time database and cloud file store are great and storing more primitive data, right? But sometimes you need to store and serve user-generated content, such as images, audio files, or video files, etc. things in your web applications. So cloud file store comes over here. So it is a great tool which is free of cost too. Obviously, free. Most of the services of Firebase is free. So you can use it and it exactly do the things which you always wanted to do, like storing the large heavy images and all the things. So it will help you to create additional feature to your applications and make your application more robust in terms of whether you are not dependent on the third-party tools. So let's see a simple example how it looks like. So you can see that I already created a dbref in the previous slide, and there is a put method, which is what it will do. It will put that file. There is object. There is a variable called file, which is a file object, which is we get from input or any source. We will put that file object into our cloud storage. So that will be really helpful. And also this will also, like, from everywhere the file is written as a promise. So this is also written a promise. So we can cache it by dot then block. So talking about hosting, right? It's really tough to host our web applications. So Firebase comes over here. Firebase hosting is a fully managed. So you don't need to rely on anything. You just do some stuff and your app is up and running hosting. So it's fully managed hosting service for static as well as dynamic contents also. The service is backed by SSDs, which is solid state drives, and uses global CDN. So it is faster as compared to the other things. Firebase hosting is a developer focused basically. It always focus on making application fast, secure, reliable, and other stuffs. All the site hosted by Firebase get a free SSL so that you can always deliver your content in secure environment. Firebase hosting is easy to use and ability to deploy a web app with a single command, which is Firebase deploy. That's it, and your whole code will be deployed in Firebase hosting. So let's talk about Firebase functions. So basically, cloud functions, as you know, these are some functions hosted on a serverless architecture. So basically, cloud functions are the Firebase are single purpose JavaScript functions that are executed in a secure and managed Node.js environment within your Firebase project itself. Sometimes you want to run your own code. That's where Firebase cloud functions come into play. It is a powerful tool that lets you handle complex logic operations from within your Firebase account only, such as performing operations on your Firebase database or interacting with various Google or external services like sending emails and other things. So let me tell you, the cloud file store is a serverless architecture, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't have servers. So basically, it is in the behinds. It always uses the servers, but it's not you to manage this. The Firebase team will take care of all the things. So you don't need to rely on managing the servers and taking headache of all the things. Cloud functions can also work with event generations generated by other Firebase project features, such as while you can trigger by using when you are authenticating a user, or when there is any update in Firebase database or Firebase real-time database, or there is a file upload, then you can send something to a user or you notify the users. So it's not only that you can trigger cloud functions by using some services, you can automate those things also. Or they can also trigger by using HTTP requests if you call it in a particular JavaScript environment. So basically, Firebase functions are the real thing which always someone wanted to implement in their code. While while functions are in Firebase are incredibly powerful, sometimes you just need a solution to common problems. So Firebase functions are really helpful over there. Luckily, there is one more tool called Firebase extensions. They are recently released in last September in Firebase Dev Summit. Extensions are collection of pre-made configurable functions to handle common uses such as resizing your uploaded image, sending emails, translating your text to different languages. You can find the complete list over in the Firebase extension on Firebase documentation. So I'll not get into deeper into much. So now here comes a great tool which I always like the most in Firebase, which is cloud messaging. So Firebase makes send push notifications to users, which basically uses cloud messaging. So basically this notification can be sent to any sort of devices. It can be Android, iOS, or web. So it is help us to engage the users and make our users more interactive with our application. Yeah, there is another great tool which is Firebase Dynamic Links. Firebase Dynamic Links are smart URLs that allows you to send existing and potential users in any location of your application or Android application. Basically, Firebase Dynamic Links are like users get the best available experience for the platform on which they are opening that link. Like if you're opening in Android or iOS browser, they're directly taken to the native application, or if you can directly open any intent or any activity from there. Even there, if anyone using in the browser in the desktop browser, then it will taken to the equivalent website content of the website. Like you said, I have to like this user should go on to this div. Then Firebase dynamic links are really grateful tool out there. In summary, you can use Firebase everywhere. You can do each and everything with Firebase. These are some tools I listed over here. You can use with the Firebase. इतना सब कुछ अब तो मैं कुछ भी कर सकता हूँ, right? So let me tell you how you can do these things. So now I'd like to call Vrijraj to take over the session.
Yeah, let's take in a section how we utilize these services and tools in web. In your community, you can create a registration form for your event. So we are going to talk about the architecture of web application. So first, you can create a web HTML page having a registration form field such as gender, name, email, and all kind of things. Before submitting a form, you can add a feature for authentication. So you can use Firebase authentication for authenticating your user. And then after authentication, user can submit the form. So here you can use Cloud Firestore as a database. Once the form is submitted, you can trigger a cloud functions. So with cloud functions, you can send a confirmation mail to your registered attendees, and also you can host your this HTML pages on Firebase hosting. And this is an example you can implement in your community with Firebase. So now Bharat will talk about the code part.
Okay, thank you, Vrijraj. Now, you all might be thinking like we have seen the architecture, how we will be going to use this thing, this event-based thing. So let's get to it. How we'll be doing that? So like this is a simple web application which I created for the demo purpose only. So here I created a login with sign up with Google account. So I will click over there. There's a pop-up coming up which will ask for my Google account, which for which I have to sign up or sign in. So basically, I'll choose my account. So as I've chosen my account, so now it will, after choosing the account, it will do some like Google will do some backend things to check whether the user is authenticated or not, and it will return me some data. Like as you've seen, I've shown him his profile, name, and his email address. So basically, this is a form which I created for like event registration, used for event registration. So as I click for the save data, it will store in my Firebase database, and it will generate a mail. Like if I click over there. You will see, thanks Bharat, and this is my email address for registration. Now after that, it will store my data in my database. This is my database. So my email, my time, name, my timestamp from by which I registered the event for like 7/9/11. And after that, I will receive something like this type of confirmation email. Hi Bharat, thanks for filling. We confirm your registration and regards to Para. So these type of recently we talk about like about the architecture. So that's what we did over here, and also we made a some code snip for that. So now let me walk you through that. As Vrijraj mentioned, like we have to create an HTML file. So that's what I did. Firstly, I created an HTML file which consists of some JavaScript SDKs by Firebase, like Firebase app, Firebase authentication, Firebase Firestore. Then in body part, I've created three more divs. The one which use when user is not logged in yet, so it uses a button which is Google sign in. Then when user logged in to show the form, and then when user successfully clicked on event and data will be sent to the server. Then after that, I also created a script file. So now let's see what is that, right? So firstly, what I did, I'll paste my Firebase configuration files over here. Then I initialize my application. Then I'm displaying only like the button which is the Google button, the Google sign in button only. So I'm taking that auth user and success as none and displaying no auth user as block. Then I've created an event listener, which is like basically click event listener. This will trigger when someone click that button, the Google auth button. So I'm getting that by document.getElement by ID, and then adding an event listener to it. And after that, I created a Google provider, which is basically a Google auth provider. Basically, I wanted to implement Google sign-in because it's very easy to implement and very secure. So I did that. And after that, I'm using the Firebase auth service. So what I did, firebase.auth, then sign in with pop-up. Up now there are two methods. You can sign in with pop-up and you can sign in with redirect. So signing in pop-up, like it will create only a pop-up, but signing in with redirect, it will redirect you to some other page. So I wanted my application should only be there should be only a pop-up and nothing else. I don't want to redirect anywhere. So after that, it will accept a provider, which we already created. And after that, it will return a callback. As I already told you, Firebase love callbacks, promises. So it return a promise, which is basically I'm handling with .then. And it also return me a result, which is a document which consists of some result or something like that. So firstly, I'm taking the access token, which you can you can store in local storage to manage the user session and all other things. After that, I created some new 4 variables like user, UID, name, and email, and setting that auth user block as a block and other as none. I'm hiding all the things. And after that, I set the auth user dot inner HTML as firstly I'm showing the image, then I'm showing 2 input buttons over there. Then after a button, which on click there is a save data. What it will do, it will send my data to my file store, cloud file store, and it will accept a UID, which is basically a variable UID, which is Firebase generated UID. And if anything goes wrong with this request, then cache is there to handle the request. As I was already told, like on this button, save data will be called. So this is basically save data button function, which is accepting a UID as the user ID, and then I'm getting the values of those 2 input fields. And after I'm checking whether those input fields are empty or like correct or not. After that, I'm creating a reference of database using Firebase.firestore, and after I'm storing that into the cloud file store by using .collection, as I already showed you, .users.doc. Basically, I'm giving .add. I showed you like .add method. .add method will generate ID by itself, but I want that the Firebase already generated ID. I want to use that. So I created like it accept a doc ID. So I given that, and .set method is to set the data into that ID. So after that, I'll pass an object over there. There is name, email, timestamp, and other things. And after that, it will also return a promise as always. And after that, I'll setting up the other things as none and only the success button as false, success division as false. And after that, I'm showing, okay, thanks for registration and all the things. And after that, we are triggering files like cloud functions. So basically, what I did, we are calling that function on create. Whenever any new object will created in Firestore, then automatically this cloud function will be triggered. This file send email. So what I'll do, it will taking up like I'll again calling as send Gmail config. It will a async function and using of try catch to handle some exceptions if any thrown. Like it is always good to take care of security purposes also. Our application is robust, so we use some try catch over there, and then we are getting the data from Firestore, and after that we are creating an object which is basically a data object which is from where we want to send to whom we want to send, then subject, then HTML part. We are showing like hi and this and there that, and after that we are using our node mailer for sending our mail. So basically, this is the code for node mailer. Like transporter, we have created an object transporter, which is a node mailer object, which which accept the services for which we are using an email or password. And don't worry, this is not shown to the user. This is your in the secure environment of Firebase functions. So there is no worry to like your data, your password will be leaked or there's nothing like that. So we are using that, and after that we are saying like, hey, my I've sent email successfully, and kindly put into the database that email is sent successfully. So that's what we did for that demo purpose. Now I would like to invite Vrijraj to take over the session.
Yeah, can I have a slide? Yeah, so thank you, Bharat, for amazing demo. So for me, Firebase is just like as a pehle इस्तेमाल करे फिर विश्वास करे, because in my college life I used to experiment with Firebase and it gave me a lot of features for implementing those projects. So to know more about Firebase, just visit the link mentioned in the slide. Here is some organization who are using Firebase for the production purpose. So here are some resources you can find. You can go through the Firebase documentation or a Firebase for web code labs and so on. So thank you and once again thanks to DSC OMG team for having us.
Thank you guys for this amazing session. The comment section was literally on fire. So it's a total directly proportional thing to that. It has been an amazing session so far. We'll have a few questions for you. We'll pop them on the screen so that it becomes easy for you to answer them.
Okay, so Firebase provide authentication services with auth. You can use third-party libraries. For example, you can authentication with Google, Facebook, or GitHub. So they have defined a functions method. You just need to pass the reference object. That's it. So that will be easy for you to implement Firebase authentication.
So we'll just wait, but I think yes, the another one question.
Yeah, you can go through the Firebase documentation, and if you are a web developer, just click on web. Otherwise, you can, if you are working on mobile platform, so then select the mobile platform. And that's tutorials are very easy documentation, and you can easily work with. If you have a basic knowledge of JavaScript, so you can easily work with the JavaScript part or with Firebase.
And I would like to say, like Firebase documentation is a great documentation. You like each and everything is properly organized and properly explained over there. Like if you want to go to the web section, then you can really, it is very handy and helpful for a developer to get those things.
Yeah, as I mentioned,
So the best way to is like go to the console.firebase.com and you will shut down the things.
So we just have one more because we have the time for it. Yes.
Yes, you can use Firebase for the CRUD operations. You can use database as a cloud file store. You can implement APIs with Node.js, and you can host at that APIs. It's totally depend on your side. Like you can host your APIs on cloud functions, or you can use your own servers. So like with Angular, you can use there is a module you can use Angular Firebase if you want to directly access the Firebase services with Angular.
Firebase, like yeah, you're talking about the how efficient it is. So I'd like to say like Firebase is something which helps developers not to write the backend. It helps you to like deploy the things easily and faster as compared to the writing backend and getting stuck at like my this code is not working, my that service is not working. So there is nothing like that in Firebase. So what I feel like using Firebase is something like God blessed us, Google blessed us. Like go and use the things.
Yeah, in simple word, you need to worry, no need to worry about the infrastructure or a backend logic. Just you need to write your own front end code, and that's it. You need to integrate with Firebase. That's it. So there is a lot of approach you can hide Firebase config file. If you're using vanilla JavaScript, so there is a you can use different approach. If you're working on like framework like Angular, React, or Vue, so you can define a config file which can you can add that config file in Webpack or any other build tools.
And I like to like say one thing, like many of the developers have this thing in mind that our Firebase configuration leak, then what will happen? So let me tell you, Firebase has this amazing thing, Firebase rules, where you can define the rules. So if any other service will hit that Firebase database or any Firebase service, that will not be executed. That will only be executed when with the services or the rules which you've written. So don't worry about if your Firebase config file leaks. If you implement the rules properly, then no worry about
Yeah.
checking off Firebase config file.
Thank you so much for this extended Q&A also with the session. It has been a pleasure to have you with us in DSC OMG, and I'm sure the audience has learned a lot from this session. Thanks you again.
Yeah. Thank you, DSC for
Thank you,
having
Raj.
us.
So before we go on with the next two speakers in line, let us just break the monotony and go back to our games like we had it in day one, and we've seen an uproar there. So I guess you're back with it for day two. So as the name suggests, this game is color mania, and yeah, so the logos will be recolored, and you have to simply guess the color in the area where we've marked it. But to not make it so simple for you and to keep a little bit of suspense, we will not reveal the product name. So you really have to keep your brains into this business now. So the first question, guys. Yes. So the area where the question mark is, what is the color that should be there? So for a little bit of hint, if you're a bit confused, this is a program from Google which delivers free digital skill and training in this Google online platform. So any guesses? A lot of answers coming in. Great. So yes, as correctly answered, it is yellow. And now on to the second question. Any guesses or like answers to this? So this is a tool from Google again, obviously, which lets you basically roam around the world and beyond, like even in space. So like the perfect tool for this pandemic right now. So again, any answers? Yeah, so this has been an easy one and the answers are already pouring in. So yes, as correctly guessed, it is orange. Moving on to the next question now. So very popular with all the machine learning guys right now. And yeah, so this is a division of Google which is solely dedicated to artificial intelligence. And yes, the answers are coming in. There is the answer, blue. So this is Google AI. Moving on with the next question for this quiz. The second last one for this quiz. Any guesses? So this is basically a superpower to create wonderful, engaging HTML5 content. Go-to for web designers. Yes, so the answer, definitely with all the web designer guys right now, the answers are here. Yes, the answer is yellow, and it is Google Web Designer. The last question for this evening. This has come up for the quiz the last day also. So I'm pretty sure most of you are aware of it. However, just for a little bit of hint, it's a video game, again by Google obviously, and it lets you paint in 3D space with virtual reality. Yes, the correct answers are pouring in again. And we have the answer. The answer is purple, correctly guessed. It's Tilt Brush by Google. Thank you for joining us with this game again, which has been an amazing performance from the team right now. So, without further ado, we have an Intel software innovator, a machine learning enthusiast, and as he proudly loves to call himself, he's a web developer since before Bootstrap was even born. He began his journey in the field of computer science in his 8th grade, with his first two projects being a search engine and a social network right from the scratch using LAMPstack. Yes, correctly guessed, it is Anubhav Singh. He's been at ACM ICPC regional finals for 2 consecutive years now. He's currently contributing in the Google Summer of Code for Submity, an active speaker at GDG Kolkata, Elasticsearch Kolkata community, and Neo4j community. He is among the youngest instructors at DataCamp and has co-authored 2 books on deep learning with FAPT publication. So we have with us Anubhav Singh with his session, Plan More, Code Less, Building Scalable Solutions. Over to you.
Thank you, Rachita. Hey, everyone. A little bit more about me. I'm mostly a web developer who loves the challenge of applying machine learning on websites. I'm a member of several open communities who make all our lives awesome, just like this DSC, right? And I also proudly lead Developer Students Club NSCC, a community of some amazing people and people who make awesome things happen in Eastern India. Also, I got myself a cool frame for the OMG event, and you too can by visiting myframe.dscomg.com. I pulled this up in a night one day. So yeah, get your frame very quickly. I have authored 2 books with PACT focusing around the application of machine learning on websites and mobile devices. I'm honored to have collaborated with 2 amazing co-authors for the books, who you can read more about following the links in my presentation. And now I have a good news for you. So since this is a web track today, I'm happy to offer 3 free copies of my book, Hands-on Python Deep Learning for the Web. How to get it is something I'll tell you over the course of this session. Now, a question I believe is important for all of us to know the answer to before attending any talk. why are we even talking about this, right? Why are we talking about this topic? Why are we talking about coding less when we are very clearly developers who love coding, right? We love coding a lot. Then why am I talking about coding less? I'll give you a moment to read this and reread this and take it in slowly. And maybe after you have done this and let this sink in, you will see the beauty of this quote. It simply states that the person who understands his or her problem better will be able to solve it better. Mind you, I said solve it better and not faster. This talk is about this small difference. And this meme shall probably set your mind in the right mode very quickly. This talk is about those moments when this happens to you. So performance versus speed. Now this might sound contradictory. And wasn't speed proportional to performance till yesterday? Yes, it certainly is even today. However, the addition of the right factors makes all the difference. If I were to allow my wisdom to flow freely, this is how I would state the difference between application performance and development speed. In short, if you want to build code without any planning at all, you might find yourself in this situation, which is not that great. So if you talk about planning before launching a super successful website, there are a few important pointers to keep in your mind. I'm very sure you must have come across these points when you would have, started your journey as a developer, when you started Googling how to develop a software or how to create a website. So you must have come across these things. And if you follow all the points, then one day you launch your website, and that night you put web dev in your resume, and overnight you become a billionaire. And you also reached 1 billion users, right? You crushed it, you totally crushed it, and you reached 1 billion users. That's exactly when the trouble began. And if you ask me my opinion on this, then the real checkpoint here should be the usual story of nightmares beyond. And irrespective of whether it happens at 1 billion users or at 1,000 users, you will reach here. Trust me, trust time, you will reach here. And then you will need an expert troubleshooter to come in. The good news is, surprise, with the proper plan, you yourself are that expert. And here I'll have a quick poll question for all of you, which you can answer by going to poll.dscomg.com, and thanks to Angad, and entering the code displayed on your screen. While you answer this, let's move forward with my agenda of convincing you why you need to plan more before you code. I know this might scare some of us, and some of you might feel excited. I strongly connect with the former category, but let's just do this for one time, right? So you must have all seen and used this function in JavaScript to separate strings into a character array, right? It's a very simple function. It's very commonly used. And a lot of people might connect it with the split operator in Python as well. But specifically, I'm going to talk about JavaScript right now. However, there's a new cool kid on the market, the spread operator. This just takes you 3 dots and the name of the variable, which holds that string to go chop chop with its character. JavaScript developers love this shorthand, and as a matter of confession, I rarely use the previous method these days. I just use the spread operator, and life's easy. You can probably go through my GitHub and you will find that I use this all the time. I don't even use the split one. I have probably never used it. But then we have a question. Which between the two is the actual cool kid, right? Which of them performs better? When you run these two functions millions and billions of times, because you have a website which has billions of users, right? So when you run this millions and billions of times every second, which one of them crunches more data? That is important. And as it happens, our old kid is the actual cool kid, right? It performs 74% faster on my laptop. And I just did this test yesterday. So this is pretty much the latest data around this. So if you were doing a string splitting on your website back in using JavaScript with the spread operator, you would run the risk of losing 74% of your potential users in a fixed duration of time. That brings down your users to just 260 million. So you were dreaming for 1 billion, but unfortunately you are down to 260 million. Let's see the story ahead. And if your dream of 1 billion was shattered with, a loud bang like this, you would probably relate a lot to this cute Pikachu. Yeah, I know I said we were doing maths for one time, but I promise this is the last time. So let's do it one last time. Say your billion-dollar website, which is now $1 million website, unfortunately, was a social network, and you were trying to store friendship relationship amongst the users. You could take this very simple approach where each friendship was listed with a unique friendship ID and also had two foreign keys on it. So the friendship ID is actually the primary key, and there are two foreign keys on this: person ID 1 and person 2 ID. And the status, while like status 0 means blocked kar diya, like they are blocked, and 1 means that the friend request has been sent, and 2 means that they are friends. So we could call this the simple solution, and every select operation on this table to get the friendship ID and the status of the friendship would require two comparisons on unindexed foreign IDs, right? Foreign keys. So person 1 and person 2 pay, you will have to do two comparisons, and both of them are unindexed. Now we know that indexed keys always have better performance while doing a select operation. And even more, we are not even performing the select over the only index column on it, right? We are not even using the index column. We are doing the comparison on the two unindexed columns. So could we be smarter with this? Like we can be better than this, right? And as it happens, we can actually be smarter with this. We can concatenate the user IDs of the two people involved in the friendship relationship, and we can set that as a primary key. That becomes one string. And on this table, to get the status of any friendship, we will have to just make one comparison, and that too on an indexed column, right? So it's the primary key, it's indexed, and the deal looks really sweet. So if you were to choose from the two, which one would you, right? Which one would you choose between the two? Now here's the surprise. Unfortunately, for the people who thought that the second query would perform better, it does not. The reason being that in the first table, we were making comparisons on two integer values. Comparing string is always more costly than comparing integers of the same length. The first method performs 1 million queries in 65 seconds. That is strictly on my laptop last night. So the first method performs 1 million queries in 65 seconds, while the second method, though it's like very small, the table is smaller, it takes 70 seconds to do one comparison. So 1 million queries in 70 seconds. Now, here's the question, right? Can we improve more on this? Now let's use a formula to calculate the friendship ID. It's a simple multiplication of the first person user ID with a million, and you could add the second user ID at the end of it, and then you form the friendship ID, right? So is this better? As it happens, it actually is better, and it takes just 55 seconds to perform 1 million queries, right? So what are the implications of this? So we saw three methods. We saw method 1, 2, and 3, and method 1 was having a sort of good, okay sort of queries per second. And method 2, which was actually the smart method, which we thought, which was smaller, is actually the worst performing method. And the final method which we came up with is actually the fastest method. And if you were using method 2 and not method 3, you would have 27% of loss, and that would mean 70 million users would reduce. Now, if this was an exam with 25% passing score, your dreams of a billion users on your website has fallen to 19%, and your dream crashes. And honestly, no one wants to be in a situation like this with their business. And if you think you're just going to answer to all of this, well, I'll put it on the cloud. I have a little philosophy for you. Saying that you will put your solution on the cloud with massive RAM guns underneath is not a way of covering up further design flaws in the technical implementation of your solution. You just need to have a better plan at everything that you have put in. Everything, right from the front-end code to the code which is handling the file system, or the code which is running on the database, or even the database design. All of it has to be planned very meticulously, and you have to make sure that whatever you are doing is the most optimal way of doing. It may be simple, but simple is not always the best. And likewise, the best may not always be complicated. So you have to think of that as well. So coming here, uh, it's easy to code, right? Anyone can watch a tutorial today and start writing code, but it's tough to plan. And the best developers in the world today they plan a lot, right? Every developer plans a lot. They do a lot of extensive research around why they are doing something which they are doing, right? Even if they are doing one if else, even if they are running one loop, they will go ahead and research about it. And only after that, they will use that particular method. It has been actually an observation that on Stack Overflow, most of the times, actually 65% of the times, the most voted answer is not usually the most performant answers. The most performant answers are actually down there, which have not got the maximum votes or which have not been marked correct, right? So you might want to think again about the code which you are using, either on the front end or on the back end or anywhere at all. Or else you could actually, end up building something which only you understand, and the world wonders what it was for. So you don't want to build something like this, which I personally feel very doubtful about what it is for. Anyway, so for building scalable solutions, you need a plan, right? You need a plan all the time. And I'll thank you here for listening to me. Here's how you can get your free copy of my book, Hands-on Python Deep Learning for the Web, which also talks a lot about optimizing machine learning on your production websites. So you have to fill in this form before 12 p.m. tomorrow by Indian time, and I'll get back to you within a week if your entry finds if it is one of the best entries from among the all entries which I get. So thank you. That was all from me, Rajita. We can take some questions. Do we have the time?
Uh, yeah, sure. We have the questions popping up on the screen.
Okay.
There has been a lot of requests for your books in the live comment section. So I'm sure a lot of people are going to reach out to you with that. And we'll surely share all your links with the users.
Sure. Okay. So Samar, thank you for the question. That's actually very good, because I think a lot of people wonder how we do all these benchmarkings. The answer is that I actually created some MySQL queries in the backend, and last night I was just spending like 5 to 6 hours creating code and benchmarking it several times, running a lot of a number of samples. You can't just run it one time and say that, hey, I have my results. You will actually have to run it, say, 10,000 times or 1 million times. And then you will have to take an average of how the performance has been going on. And it might happen that your machine is biased. So you might also want to run it on the cloud. You have to make sure that your environment of running is extremely, same all through the duration of the time when you're running the benchmarkings, right? So if you want to have a very quick sample around this, so it's like if you are, say, running a benchmarking code, the first time that you made a test, you had your Chrome open, but the next time you run the test, you had your Chrome closed. So the benchmarkings are actually going to come out wrong, and you will eventually take the wrong decision while you are building your backend code or maybe your front end code. So you want to avoid the changes in the environment.
Thanks, Anubhav. It has been an amazing session with you. Definitely informative. Okay, we have another question now.
Which ML models you're using while building projects? So I think this question is something which excites a lot of ML developers. So it does not depend upon which ML models I'm using while building projects. Scalability does not depend upon that. Scalability depends upon the planning that we have done around which models we are deploying in what way, right? So if you have a very large model which takes a lot of time to execute, you might not want to keep it in online execution, as in when the query comes in, it starts executing, it produces an output, and then it sends back to the user. It's going to take like 5-10 seconds, and the user will be bored by then. A lot of users might even think that it's not working, right? Because as internet users, we have a very short amount of attention span. So you want to make sure that that particular model, if it is very crucial to have it running in live, so you might want to put it on a server with a lot of RAM power. But if it is not entirely necessary to have it running live and produce live results, you might want to make another script which comes in and runs that model for all the entries in the database, and it stores the output and later on when the user comes in and queries for a prediction, it actually just pulls data from the database. So there are actually a number of ways to do this, and if you search for that, if you search for online learning, and if you search for batch processing, these terms are actually going to give you the correct answers.
We have a lot more questions coming in. However, we'll take a few more. So here.
Sure. Can you give an example of any website and how you planned for it and how you coded it to reach the final website? So Muskan, one good way of how you plan around what you're going to build is you need to first of all make sure the database design is correct, right? So you need to understand that not one database is suitable for all the applications that you're going to build. You have to think of what database you are going to use, right? MySQL is not the best database for everything. Similarly, NoSQL is not the best database for everything, right? Recently, I came across a project in which I had to choose to use Cassandra. Now, Cassandra is a kind of NoSQL database, but it is internally wired in a different way. So even that makes a lot of difference, right? If you think about the technologies that YouTube uses, or if you think about the technologies that Instagram uses, then you will see that they are not using, say MySQL. They are not using PostgreSQL. Actually, they are using it a bit, but MySQL is not being used by either of them, and they are using Cassandra, right? You might not have even explored Cassandra. Cassandra is one of the databases which a very less amount of people are exploring these days. So you might want to think around this, right? Which database do you need? You should have a very strong research around it. You should read out the internal implications of how a certain query is being executed on that particular database, and if it is suited for your needs, right? And there's actually if you think about MySQL developers, then they do a lot of join queries, right? We are taught in college that your databases should be properly normalized so that you reduce the redundancy, and a lot of things around normalization. So not always you want to normalize the data. Sometimes you want to use denormalization. A lot of times, actually, if the database is not correctly designed, you might want to go for a denormalized instance of your database. In Cassandra, a lot of times you use denormalized tables, right? So you want to plan a lot around the database, and then you want to plan a lot around the language you are going to use for the backend. And as my question in the poll, the one which I asked, so it might happen that at times you might have to learn entirely new languages or entirely new frameworks for the project which you are looking at. It cannot be like you learn one language and that is the silver bullet for everything. It cannot happen. So make sure that whatever project you're building, you have a very strong research around the problems you might face when you reach the 1 billion user stage, and you research around how to solve those, and you find the solutions or the tools which solve it for you easily, or else you invest time in building those solutions. You don't just pull off an open source package and start using it, trying to hack into it. It might even end up wasting more of your time instead of giving you uh, instant performance boost. So yeah, you need to research a lot around the databases, the languages, the frameworks, whatever you're using. Do we have more questions, Rajati?
Yeah, we have one more, I guess.
Okay. To build scalable solution, does AWS or GCP or any other cloud provider make a difference? If yes, then which will you suggest? So if you ask about how a cloud provider makes a difference, then you will have to understand how that cloud provider is actually working, right? So if you think about GCP, say you have a website which uses one instance for database, or maybe say one instance for the backend API and one instance for the front end, then you have to think about how these two instances are going to communicate between each other, right? So on AWS, the difference is that when you have two machines on the same LAN, or like in the same region, they are actually going to communicate over internet, right? They are going to use the public internet to communicate with each other, and that might at times be slow and prone to security risks, might, right? If you have configured them incorrectly. And if you're using GCP, then they actually use their own lines to communicate, and that is usually more faster. So you have to think around that. But if you're, say, deploying just one instance and you just have a small amount of requirement, then it does not really make any difference. It depends around how you are structuring your application, how you are designing the system which you are building your application around. Then you have to go and understand what are the differences between these two cloud providers in how they are, executing my stuff. So if say GCP has a center in India, and say because AWS does have, there might be some other cloud provider which does not have a center in India, and your primary customers are Indians, then you want to choose a cloud provider which actually has a data center in India, right? So that your queries are routed to the nearest data center and they can quickly return you the results. The users will be happy. They will be getting the answers faster than they would get from a data center which is sitting in the US.
Anubhav, we have one more by
Okay.
Abhinav. Yes.
How do you actually distinguish when to use NoSQL or a relational DB? So, Abhinav, if you have a database like requirement, right, in which you can think about a fixed number of columns for each entry. If you can think about that, then it's very fine to use a relational database, right? But if you have a database requirement which may or may not have a fixed amount of columns for each entry, then you definitely want to go for NoSQL, because implementing that in relational DB is actually going to be very hard. There are models which allow you, database models which allow you to implement kind of NoSQL environment into relational, but you might want to give that a skip because it's not worth the effort if you already have access to NoSQL databases which can do it faster for you.
So we've had many more questions other than this, but you can reach Anubhav through his website link. We'll pop them in the screen. He's available over there, and we'll go ahead with the next session. But
Thank
what
you,
is a
Rajat.
session with you without memes? So thank you for the slides. I'm sure it has been entertaining.
Thank
Thank you. Now we have with us Akash. He's a computer science undergraduate and a student developer at Google Summer of Code. He's a CTF player and an avid learner. Akash is here with us for a session on Open Source 101. So if you're interested in open source, but you're really confused as to how to get started, or probably you've sent your proposal to Google Summer of Code and it has unfortunately been rejected. So you really need to be on the session to understand how to grasp the concepts of open source and your chances on making it to open source Google Summer of Code, especially 2021. So we have with us Akash. Over to you now.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your brief introduction about me. So, hey guys, this is Akash. So, I'm pretty happy, um, because this is my first time talking in front of this many people. That's the great thing, So, yeah, can you show the my screen? Let me share my screen as well. Okay, here we go. I just want to make sure, can you see my screen? That's right. Okay, fine. So yeah, today's session is going to be about fully about open source. So it'll be for the beginners as well as product developers who wants to get into open source development. So let me introduce myself. I think right now. So yeah, I'm a computer science undergraduate at Satyabama Institute of Science and Technology, Chennai. And yeah, I'm a student developer at OWASP as a part of a summer of two. I'm working as a front-end developer for the OWASP, and I'm a CDF player specializing in Android and reverse engineering. Yeah, I'm a tech lead, Developer Student Club, Saurabh Institute of Science and Technology as for ML and design. And yeah, of course, I'm a PC gamer. Yeah. So first thing first, what is open source? Many people used to ask, like they used to ask me like, what is open source? Why is it mean like open source? So basically, when it comes to open source, is where the source code of a software is kept available for everyone where they can access and modify it. So it is where like um, the software application is get innovated and like new feature comes in by many people. So yeah. So I just want to share one example, which was shared by my DSL lead Teja. So that would be great if I could share it with you all. So basically, there was a shopkeeper who was running his business with a calculator, small calculator, which does only addition operation. So one day, a customer came in. He just saw the calculator which was right in front of him, and he noticed only the calculator does only the addition operation. So he just proposed this idea that that he could add even more features to it, as add addition and multiplication, division, and other operations to the calculator. And when he proposed this idea to the shopkeeper, he was impressed and he gave the access to modify it. So when he got the access to modify it, he took that and modified, he enhanced it and make changes and give it to the user, like the shopkeeper. And his business was growing because he was able to do all the tasks within less amount of time. So yeah, so basically this is the definition of what is open source. As I said, the calculator was kept open where the user, where the customer, where the contributor was able to inspect it. He was able to find the issue in that so in the project, and he was able to modify it once he got the access, and he was able to enhance for the best, better experience for the end user. So it's all about the open software. Why open source? Basically, many companies go for open source, and many companies don't go for open source. So I'll give you one example. If you have a company, you just hire a few people who have limited amount of idea in their mind. They just come up with a traditional idea. They just code. They just develop software, and it doesn't make any innovation, right? There's no innovation, right? But when it comes to open source, new minds come in. They just contribute their own feature. They just contribute their own idea. They where new features add and they fix bugs, and they make it optimized, and you know uh, it gets improved, so that it gives even more better experience to the end user who uses the software. So why you should go for uh, why you should contribute to open source is because when it comes to open source contribution, many companies you get what to say, many people just rely on internships and participate in hackathon and all those things. But when it comes to open source, you don't need to do that. Like you don't need to rely on any there's nothing like interviews, there's nothing like eligibility criteria to contribute. Like many students just if they will be applying for internships, but they just don't get the opportunity and they just stop it over there itself. Even for hackathon, like they try to participate in hackathon, but they won't get any ideas. They just stop it right away over there itself. So when that is where this source contribution helps them, so, to get pretty much get productive and gain more experience. So basically, when it comes to open source contribution, they get benefits like getting travel grants to get travel to some conference for free, and they get swags, and even sometimes if you are an active member, if you are actively contributing to open source software, you get even full-time jobs as well. So that is one of the reasons why you should contribute to open source. And last thing, the main thing is you just contributing to the open source community who is non-profit organization, where they can't rely on any software developers, or like they can't hire any software developers, right? In that case, you can come in and you can contribute to those projects as well. So that is one of the reasons why you should go for a open source contribution. So how to contribute? So there are many ways. Many people used to ask me how to get started and how to contribute to the open source projects. So basically, if you are a beginner, you can just start with fixing the typos in the documentation. Many people used to say like fixing typos not uh, is it's not a contribution. Basically, it plays a lot of work. In my project, which I'm working on currently as a part of do some of code, there was a name. There was a menu which had a name. I don't remember what it is, but like I thought, but there was a typo in. I thought that word will be having a different meaning, so I thought of taking it, copying it at, and finding the meaning in the Google. So when I searched it, I just found out that it had a bad meaning. It was having a bad meaning, which was um, which is quite a disaster. Like yeah, I would say it's a disaster because it's a production level software, and this word found in there. So just imagine a person who knows the meaning of the word and saw that, notice that it would be a huge mess, right? So fixing typos plays a lot of role. Then, if you're competitive, there's one more question like, I'm a competitive programmer. How can I get started with contributing to open source project? Like, I don't know product development. How can I help in this contribution? So basically, many softwares are available where it needs a lot of optimization and writing a clean code. So in this case, computer programmers can come in, they just go through all the code, they can find any bugs and they can fix it up, and even they can optimize, they can find some functions where they can even optimize it better, which will give even more better experience to the user, which will make it even more fast, like run the task even pretty fast. So in that case, you can even contribute to that. And other case like many people doesn't know how to write code, but they can read a code, like read and understand the code pretty much well. So just a minute, sorry. Okay, okay, sorry. Um, so yeah, sorry guys. So yeah, um, in many cases there will be people who doesn't know how to write a proper code, but they can understand and they can understand the code pretty much well. So in that case they can go through the code, many they can go through the code and they can write inline comments to it. So that is pretty much needed for open source software, because when the next developer comes in, he needs to understand the code, right? So I'll be writing code in my style, but like when another developer comes in, you won't be able to understand it. So in this case, inline comments plays a lot of role. So when you just it's all these things, that is where you can contribute. There are many ways you can can get in and contribute. So there's nothing like you need a lot of experience in coding to contribute to a open source project. So this is where many people would have been like at some time. So yeah, uh, like finding for someone's opinion is a good thing, but when it comes to open source, it's not like that. Like I won't suggest it at all, because I just want like people to jump in. They just jump in and find how it is. Like you can't uh, you can't find the depth of a river without keeping like putting your uh, feet into it, right? So you just have to jump in, like you need to find the complexity of like contributing to open source projects. So that is what I would suggest you to do. So yeah, so many people used to ask me like I just know this much amount of coding, shall I apply to open source projects? It's like asking, I know how to write a hello world program, and shall I have to apply to Google? So it's not like that, you just need to improve yourself, right? I won't even say like you just need to keep a separate timing for learning coding, and you need to go for, not like that. You can even learn by doing, right? You can just jump in, you can find a like a project, and you can understand the code and contribute and learn at the same time. Like just learn, you can explore, and at the same time you implement it, right? So I would suggest that. Yes, as I said, strive for progress and not perfection. There's nothing like you're going to lose or you're going to gain. Nothing like that. So, so basic thing is when you contribute, there's nothing like first try success. Um, uh, like when you contribute, they want like most of cases they want to merge your code, but at the same time you learn things, right? You learn from failures. Every developers do that. Developers always learn from experience, like previous experience. So like there's nothing like you have to be perfect. You can just get in and can just get in and you can write code and you just need to connect with the mentors and you learn new things. So that is why you don't need to be the perfect in writing code. Yeah, do we have any tools? There are basically few tools available. Today I just want to tell about only two things. Like uh, one is version control system. Like version control system is basically help you to keep a track of changes made to the software application, like source code. So it keeps like when a developer comes in, you will be able to see what sort of changes have been made by which user, and you will be able to like understand what is going on, like what have been done uh, previously. So there are two tools available basically, which is Git and GitHub. So there's another question arises like from many people. What is the difference between Git and GitHub? So basically, GitHub is a provider, it's a service provider for like it has a server where you just can just save your projects, and it help you to keep a track on changes that you have made and like for example, you might have seen in Google Play Store, like when you see like under the app, you'll be able to see what sort of changes, what sort of updates have been made. They are called change logs, but see, it GitHub like adds a similar thing. It will keep it will keep a track of what sort of changes have been made recently. So like new developer comes in and you will be able to understand what's going on over there. And Git acts as like a tool which connects the local repository and the main repository, which is there in the GitHub main server. So I just shown one example, like how it works. So this is how the architecture looks like. So basically, you will be having a local main server, which will have the main repository in GitHub. So you just clone it. It will create like um, so before this, I just want to say one thing. So GitHub is a distributed version control system. So basically, version control system, like there are two types: centralized and distributed. Centralized is there will be a main server, and the many users will just connect with it, and they just make changes to it. But the problem is when they make these sort of changes, it will mess up everything, right? Because everyone will be changing to one code base, and it will cause a lot of merge conflicts. In this case, GitHub came with the distributed version control system, where it will create a cluster of repositories where it will be creating a local repository which acts as a local server. So whatever changes you make, you can like made in the main server, which can be pulled to the local server. So you can even make local changes which will not be updated over there. So you can push it like say, like it will help in getting rid of merge conflicts by many users. So that is how like distributed version control system works. Yeah. So in this case, Git is used to connect the main server and the local repository to to push and pull the code, like make commits and update, make changes to the code base. So this is another question which has been asked to me like many times, like how to crack it, how to get into GSOC. Well, yeah, I just want to say this to you all. So GSOC, getting into GSOC, I thought when I was getting into GSOC for the first time, when I was applying for the first time, I thought it would be pretty hard. You need a lot of experience, and you need to start contributing like before few months, get into it. But it's not the case, It's before discussing about how to crack GSOC process, I just want to talk about the myths of getting into GSOC. So basically, many people used to say that you need to start contributing uh, priorly because then only they will be able to understand if you're pretty much capable enough to contribute or not. But it's not the case. You can like there are many projects available where you can just uh, need to do the task. Like you just need to do the task and complete it and showcase it to the mentor where they'll be able to understand if you are capable enough or not. But even that is not needed. If you don't need to even do the task. Proposal matters a lot. Making a good proposal is the main thing that is needed to crack the GSOC process. So there is another thing they'll be wondering I'm just contributing to a project, but what if it won't be available for the next coming GSOC season? So basically, there are ways that you can find it out. If the project that have been like participated for previous years, like for 2 years, there are more chances that the same project and the organization will be available for this year as well. But this year, in current 2020, there was a change made because like our organizations which have been participated for past 10 years have been removed, like not removed, they didn't participate this year, like those sort of changes are being made. So this is also like you don't need to trust, like it's better you to like uh, stop believing it. So what I would suggest is start connecting with the mentors. Start like when you find a project, like get into the community, start connecting with the mentor. Like try to show your interest, try to show how much you can like discuss your idea. That is where it will also make them to apply to GSO if your idea is pretty good. So that is one of the reasons why you should connect with the mentor and cracking GSOC process. Like let me tell you how I got into GSOC. So I applied into GSOC in my second year, which was got rejected basically. So what I did, just analyze how I got rejected. So the basic thing is my proposal was not that good because it was not having much details in it. It was not pretty much enough for the mentor to understand what I'm trying to say. And then I was not active in the community. I didn't connect with the mentor itself, so he didn't know if I'm capable enough to contribute or not. He didn't know about me if I'm even a developer or not. So in that case, like I was not that good at that time. I didn't know that I have to connect with the mentor because I don't know much like things. But later on, when I analyze all these things, I just improved this year. So first thing, when I was looking the projects, like I just took one thing. So yeah, so I just did one thing. So basically, what I did was yeah. So I was contributing to project which is based on security fully backend. But later on, I just noticed one thing that my project was missing this year. So what I did, instead of searching for next project which is in the same field like backend for security, I just found one thing called which is a front end project. A front end project should be worked on Angular. So I was like inspecting their project. When I was inspecting, I just found that the UI was pretty not good. Like it was not that good. But the goal and the intention of the project was, it was really great. So that is one of the reasons why I selected the project which I'm working on right now. So then when I selected it, um, like I didn't discuss about what I know. I didn't like when I applied, I had zero knowledge about Angular, so I didn't care about the tech stack or anything. So So I just straight away went to the community. I just connected with the mentor. I just want to see, like, show how I like how I got started. Like, yeah. So this is the first place where it all started. Like this is where I got connected. So I was showing pretty much interest of like how I want to contribute to the project. When I like um, when I was showing much interest, he was also like the mentor also like was showing pretty much interest because my design and proposal was pretty good. Like I didn't show any there was a task, but I didn't came up with that. Instead, I just went with um, like the proposal itself. So just try to connect with the mentor. That is the only key point, key to get into GSO. And making a proposal, like it's a biggest task. Like first proposal was pretty bad. It was not that good. To be honest, I didn't mention many details as well. Same like last year. Later on, like I just came up with a new proposal with four methodologies. That is like I just implemented the same security in this. So in ethical hacking, basically there are five phases of ethical hacking. So first is like um, like reconnaissance, enumeration, and gaining access, maintaining access, and clearing time. Same I applied with the software development as well. So basically, the first thing is discovery. Um, discovery phase, I just connect with the mentor, gain all the ideas, the requirements that is made by the organization, and the tools and whatever tech stack which is needed. And incubation is where I just create the environment which is needed to develop the software. Implementation is where I'll be developing the software, and last is and implementation is where I'll be developing software and make testing, and there in the delivery phase I'll be delivering the project to the user, and creating the documentation as well. So when I created all these methodologies, and I explained all these things in detail, it gave me a proper proposal which made the mentor to get interest of what I did. So this is the only thing which helped me to get into GSO. Even they knew that I have zero knowledge in with Angular, but still they selected me because I was pretty much interested, like with their goals. So basically, there are some best practices that every contributor at the first time they should follow. So first thing is writing a commit message. So when you before writing a commit message, I would like to say one thing. So when you add a new feature, when you add new functions to a project, like make make commits every time, like every single functions you add, make a commit. Then only the developer, whoever comes in, they'll be able to understand what sort of feature, what sort of bug you have fixed, what sort of feature you have added to the software source code. So make a comment, but uh, it depends. If you are writing a full file, like old file, single file, then you can make a single comment. But if you're working on different files, and you're adding a single feature to it, so for each file, make each comment, make a single comment. So that will give a brief detail about what sort of changes you have made. And writing commit message, like a proper commit message, is pretty pretty much near, because um, as I said, developer, whoever wants to continue developing the software, they need to understand what you have made, what sort of changes you have made. Some people will be writing they have created a file, some file, which is they just add a comment message like, I've added a file, that's it. But what file it is, what it does, they don't mention it, right? So that is more important when it comes to software, open source contribution. And if possible, write an inline comments to your code. Like um, that is also like pretty needed. So I think I came up with the last thing. Uh, yeah, if you have any questions, like you can, if you have any questions, you can ask me now. I think time, I guess. Okay. Let me check.
We have a few questions for you. We'll have
Okay.
them pop up on the screen.
Mhm. Contribute to it. So basically, there are, yeah, thank you, Naveen, for asking the question. So there are a lot of like many beginners try to find difficulties in finding a repository, like finding a right project. So what I would suggest is instead of seeing their tech stack or any other things like their organization name, better understand their goals of the project. That is more important. Like when you understand, if you are like what is it, you're using some software and the UI is not good, like what you will do, like you just go in and you just propose like you want to add, like you want new feature, like new UI to it. So in that case, you can just jump in instead of relying on a different person to contribute to that. You can just jump in and you can propose your idea. Later on you can just explore, you can learn somewhere and you can start contributing to it. So it doesn't matter you have to be a beginner or expert to contribute to a project. It's all about learning, right? You can't stay at like um, the place where you are. You need to improve yourself, right? So this is where you can improve yourself. So any repository is open, like you can get started. So it doesn't mean that you need only like start with writing data structures, like small things about. So it's not like that. You can start with any repository, like any project. So yeah. So, or what I would suggest is finding project. One more thing is there, like there are some projects which are pretty much inactive. So, what I would say is after finding a goal, like go to the pull request page, pull request page. That is where you will be able to find what is the if the project is active or not. Because some pull requests have been might have been made in the year 2016, but still it will not be might not have been merged to the main repository. So there are some cases like that. So in that case, I would suggest you to ignore it and go for different projects and never follow the trend of what others are doing. So just follow your path. You just follow if your goal matches with other the project goal, like organization goal, start contributing to them. Nobody is going to stop you. Like, nothing will be going to stop you. Yeah.
We have a few more questions. We will
Yeah.
pop
Sure.
them up again.
Yes, of course. Yeah, as I said, internship is not only the thing which will give you a development experience. Not at all. Even open source, because open source is not what is it, like a normal a simple project. It's also a production level project which is currently in production. So you'll be working on real time projects where it will be giving you real time experience on working on real time code. So it of course give you a proper experience that will able to um, give the companies an idea that you are pretty good and contributing, like having enough experience to work in their company. So of course it will give you a proper good opportunities in many companies. So yeah. So, any other questions?
We'll have one last question for you and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, sure. Okay. So, one thing is you don't need to work alone. Right? Many communities are there, many organizations are there where you can connect with the mentors. Every organization will be having a mentor or a maintainer of the project. You can start connecting with them. They won't say no at all. That is the best benefit of open source community. like you can just straight away get into their organization community, where you can connect with those community people, where you can discuss with them, you can ask them, you can get help, and you can, this is how you'll be able to understand their project and their code bases. So if you are stuck in some cases, I would suggest you to connect with these mentors and the community people, so that will help you to understand. In many cases there will be an inline comment, so you will not find difficulties on understanding the code. So yeah. um is there any other, like, I think it's good, right? Is there any other question?
Check. We're checking for some more questions. We'll have
Okay.
them on the screen.
Okay. Okay, so this is, yeah, this happens a lot with me as well. So in this case, what you can do is, so you can come up with your own idea, create an issue. Don't rely on any like issue which is already exists. Just come up with your own idea. You can implement it, like add new feature to that same issue, and you can create a new issue and start contributing to it. So that will not make a big it's not a big deal. So you can just do it. You don't need to rely on which the issues which is already exist. But sometimes you can even collaborate with the person who has been taken that issue, because sometimes they won't be able to contribute to it with that. They'll be taking like the issues, but they will not be able to contribute to it. In that case, you can just start contributing to that. So they just taken the best uh, um, like solution which have been made to make your own branch, create your own branch, and do your contribution to it. So that's what you can do. So, yeah. So I just want to share one resource, like uh, just a minute. Yeah, what's number? How to get this. Yeah, of course. There's nothing like you need to, like, even if you're a school student, you can get started with open source. Like even if you're third year, like even the working people, there's nothing. It's not even a job, man. It's not like getting into a company like normally. So you can contribute to open source anytime, like being in any like, place. So yeah. So basically, that what I would suggest is try out the project, like run the code in your machine, and try to understand on all each and every functionalities. When you do all these things, you'll be able to find like some bugs, or you'll be finding, getting some idea to add some features over there. So in this case you can just jump into that specific code snippet, or code base. You can start contributing to that. So this is how you can figure out where you should contribute. So you don't need to go through all the things and like finding something to contribute to a project. So running the software and trying it out is a main part of from this contribution. So you have to do it. So, fine. So just for a minute later that. So, okay. So this is where this should be done by yourself. Otherwise, you need to wait till someone contribute. So if any like package is not updated, you just pull in the code and make update it, and you just push it again. It's not a big deal. Like do it. So this is the only thing, because GitHub can't upgrade the things like by itself. So So it should be done by it should be done manually. So yeah, I think I've shared a link. Like, can you guys, can you share that link to?
Uh, and we for your session. It has definitely been intriguing to our audience, and we've loved you for DSC OMG.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead with a video now. This is a huge thank you to the pillars behind this program. So, without any further ado, on to the video.
Don't wake me 'cause I'm dreaming. I always be your captain. You told me I'm your anchor. I told you you're my ball. Through the wind and fire, we tried. Hold on. All the doors we've opened and all the books we've closed. Words that come together, story that we never told. So if I say in for my own, you said just keep holding on. If you're about to break, oh, I always be your captain. From our failures we have grown. You said just keep holding on. If you're about to break, oh, I always be your captain. Be your captain. I always be your captain.
Lead who's attended the summit, and it has been an amazing video and a great memory experience for everyone who's been there and enjoyed those 3 days thoroughly. So, with that memory, and then we are now proceeding on to our last speaker, who's definitely not the least now. His name is Bratin Kundu. He's the DSC lead at UV Patel College of Engineering. He's an organizer for Mehsana Developer Club, and he's currently a project trainee at Gateway Technolabs. We have with us Bratin for a session of Web in NG. So over to you, Bratin.
Hi, thank you so much for awesome introduction. Just give me a minute. I'm sharing my screen. So just 2 minutes. Okay, so hello everyone. I am Bratin Kundu. I am Developer Student Club lead at UVPC and also organizer at Mehsana Developers Club. So yeah, today I'll be mostly talking about web in NG. NG, that means Angular. So um, Angular is an application design framework and development platform for creating efficient and sophisticated single page application. So I said something like single page application. So you might be thinking that what is actually single page application, right? So um, Angular actually is good framework to prepare single page application, and is also a end-to-end framework. So we'll first look at what is single page applications. So firstly, here is the normal behavior of a website, how actually the website works. So we have a client and we have a server. So whenever user in the browser, checks types on the address bar that www dot, let's say, example.com. So what happens is a page request is fired and it goes to the server. Server interprets that and send the markup for that specific page to the client. The client renders that markup and then renders the UI based on the markup. And this is how it goes. So let's say in your website you have you have a tab called about us. So when you click on that tab, again the same thing happens, like a page request fires to the server. Server again interprets the request, and it returns the response in form of the markup for that specific about us page. The client again receives it, and then again it renders the UI. So this goes on and on for each and every small action that user performs. So the thing is, whenever you send a page request to the server, and server sends a page response, a markup response, the client will load again and again. It will reload multiple times whenever you are actually sending a page request. So for that, what is the problem here is the page requests are very heavy in nature, and also the network bandwidth used for this page request are much more. So the next thing is, the what is the scenario with single page application. So for single page application, there is a client again. It sends the request to the server. The enough to route for each and loads the each and every page that user can request, and it loads each and every page based on the route. So for example, like you want to fetch data from any API or fetch data from Firebase. In that case, you have to make some data calls. So for that, whenever you are actually loading a page, you have to send a data request here. Data request goes to the server and server responds to the data. So you may be thinking that, right, this time we have a data request, but last time also we had some request, but that was a page request. Here what we have is a data request. So in terms of data request, what we have is, in most of the cases we have JSON data, and with JSON data, the load here is very cheap, and the main thing is the client need not to load again and again in this page whenever he requests a data. So as the result, the bandwidth usage is very less, and this is how the overall flow works for single page application. Now, Angular is actually a front-end framework, and it has some of the great features. Like, first thing is data binding and fastest load. So the data binding and fastest load means every web development requires data synchronization between the model and a view. So there is a model and a view, right? So model is basically the data, and view is more or less deals with the UI part, what actually user can see there. So Angular supports both one-way data binding and also the two-way data binding. So we will talk more about one-way data binding and two-way data binding in later slides. Um, Next thing is speed and performance. So what the scenario in Angular is, it transforms your template into highly optimized code so that it is suitable for the JavaScript virtual machine. Now, when it is optimal for JavaScript virtual machine, so you can use any of the technology to serve applications. Like you can use Node.js, you can use .NET for this, you can use PHP, right? And the main thing what this feature is good for is, like, you request data, or you request pages. So for each and every page, Angular loads only that part of data what you are requesting for. Like you request for page A, so Angular will actually load the data for the code for page A only. So next thing is modular. So when you, let's say you are building a large application using Angular, so you always prefer to work on modules. Like you are building an e-commerce website, so you will make a authentication module where you will implement the sign in and sign up and forget password kind of features. You will have a cart and payment module differently, so you can handle that cart part on a different cart functionality on a different module, and then payment functionality on another modules. So it's always good to break things into modules, because it makes the code clean and also understandable and also easy to manage. Next thing is the cross-platform stuff. So you can make a web application and mobile application with Angular. So you might be knowing this, and by this you can know that also. But if you are looking to make something like hybrid web application or hybrid mobile application, like, so let's say you want to make a iOS application and Android application at the same time, writing a same code base. So what you have to do is you can use Ionic with Angular here. If you, let's say you don't want to make a hybrid application, but you want to make a native application, so what you can do is you can use native script for that. So you can make a iOS and Android application at a different thing. Also you can use Electron.js. So by that you can actually shape the desktop applications as well. Next thing is MVC. So when anyone says MVC, everyone tends to say that it is model, view, and controller. So, but the makers of Angular initially said that it's not actually model, view, controller, but it's like model, view, and star. So the star is actually whatever. Like you can say it's a controller, you can say it is a component, or anything that relates to the backend part. So the next thing is single page applications. So that client need not to load again and again for each and every request. And yeah, so now let's fire up some comments on this I would like to have some comments from you guys. Do you know any web application that actually is built on Angular? On the comments, please. Google. Okay, very close. Google product. It's the hint is Google product. Gmail. Yes, Gmail. It's perfect. Any other examples? Okay. Yeah, Gmail application, Google search. Okay, so let me go to the next slide. So yeah, as someone said that Gmail. So yes, Gmail is built on the Angular. Also, one more thing is the weather.com. The weather.com is also built on Angular. And there are many other things like forbes.com. So forbes.com is also built on the Angular application, Angular framework. PayPal, yes, PayPal is again built on the Angular. So yeah, moving to next, end-to-end framework. So for before some time I mentioned that it is Angular is also a end-to-end framework. So what do I mean by that? I mean, so it's like Angular is having so many other things by which you can actually build a foolproof application using Angular. So you have the first thing that I want to share is Protector. So Protector is a tool that you can use for end-to-end testing for your Angular application. The second thing is Augury. Augury is actually a plugin that you can install in your Chrome browser, or you can any of the browser that you are using, which helps you to debug your Angular application in runtime. The third thing is forms. So we all are actually any of the most of the websites are using sign in and sign up feature. So there are many of the template driven forms, and also the reactive forms, also the dynamic forms. So forms is also one of the feature from Angular that you can use. Next thing is PWA. PWA stands for Progressive Web Application. We just heard it about in the cross. Sorry. So it is a progressive web application, and uh, if you are having your Angular application, you can easily switch it to uh, progressive web. You can easily make it to progressive web application using progressive web app semantics that is present in Angular. Next thing is which is very latest, that is Angular Universal. So Angular is actually a client side application, is used for building client side application. But if you want to render your application on a client side, so you can do this with your with Universal. And what it helps is it helps to increase the SEO of your application. Karma is used for unit test cases. Next thing is material design. So how many of you have used material design? On the comments, please. Great. So there are many. Material UI for React. Yep, I can see a lot of me. Yes, here for Vue. Great. So so you can use material elements in your existing Angular application by using the material module. that is present in Angular. Next is Angular CLI. So it is actually a command line tool that actually helps you to scaffold the Angular application. So if you don't want to start building your Angular application from scratch, you can use Angular CLI, which actually helps you to give a basic structure, a default module, built-in default module for you using the scaffolding, and you can get this in seconds. Next is internationalization. Like you have built your application, and if you want to deploy to any of the location, so you can do this by using the internationalization feature of Angular. Next is HTTP. So you all might be those who are actually doing for web applications. So you might be aware about AJAX calls. So in Angular, you make AJAX calls using HTTP module. So we'll look at the modules later on. Next up. So yeah, next up here is architecture for Angular application. So the Angular is built in with TypeScript. TypeScript is nothing but a superscript of JavaScript, which ultimately compiles to the JavaScript again. Angular is a framework for building client-side application, and it has many of the libraries. So you can see, right, if you want to make a HTML template in Angular, so you can use Angular markups like ng template, ng model, like of thing, and you can use TypeScript classes to manage the events, add some logics to any events. You can use the TypeScript classes. So Angular application architecture has basically the 8 main building blocks. So you can see here at the top left, that is this is the module. Below that, you can see an injector rectangle that is actually a dependency injection. So what dependency injection lets you do is it decouples your UI part and your backend logic. That is, both are independent from each other. Next is your template, that is your HTML and designing thing. Metadata, then you have the component, then you have the property and event binding, which actually is covered under the data binding part. Also, you have directives as one of the building block for Angular. So yeah, we will start with modules. So first thing, just think about it as you have a container, and inside that container you have another container, and in that container again you have two more containers. I am sure I have done my best to confuse you guys, right? So yeah, let me let me go with clear thought. Like just look at this blue box, which is actually a big kind of looking big in size. So the component box, the white one, can fit inside this blue colored box, that is a module. So you can assume that this blue part as a module, and this white as a component. So component is a part of module, and then you have code and templates. So templates mostly deals with the UI part. You have HTML files, and you have the CSS or SCSS files associated with that, and also the code, like you have the TypeScript classes for handling the events and all those stuff. So that fits inside a component, and that component fits inside a module. So each and every Angular application has a module class, that is a root module, which is named as app module. So there are many Angular libraries, as I mentioned earlier. So the Angular libraries are something like, and they are also modules. Like if I give example, I gave earlier as well, like HTTP. So it is a library, and at the same time it is a module as well. Form, so form module is also a library, and at the same time it is a module as well. So next up is the component. So again, the component is having the controller, that is nothing but your TS file, or you can say the which handles the logic, the backend logic, and the view file, the HTML or CSS part. The input and output here means that you can give any of the input to this component, and also you can export any data from the component. Yeah, components, you can say components are supporting, they are actually supporting the views. You can define a component application logic inside a class file, and that class file interacts with some of the properties and methods associated with the component. Next up is metadata. So metadata helps Angular. So what basically metadata do is, you have app classes, TS classes here, right? So how will Angular know that the TS class is a component class? So for that metadata comes into picture, and for that purpose we add a metadata to each class, which we generally call as decorators. So if on the right side of the picture, if you see, I have this is the class, says that on the eighth line, it says that export class app component, and inside that I have a title, which is a property for that class, app component class. Now this app component has to be, Angular must know that this app component is actually not a normal class, but it is a component. So for that we use a decorator. You can see on the third line, that is @component decorator. So each and every decorator is prefixed with @. We also have injectable decorator associated with Angular as well. So with @Angular, you can say that this class belongs to the Angular component. Next is data binding. So now you have your view and you have your backend data logic, that you are handling that interactivity between the backend and front end. So what you will do is, you want to push some data to HTML, or you want to take some data from the HTML for processing something. So it's always difficult to push or pull data from component to HTML, and it is indeed very tedious. So for that, there is a support in Angular, that is data binding, which actually synchronizes the actually synchronizes between template and component. So as you can see here, there are four forms of binding shown. The first is interpolation, the second is property binding, third is the event binding, and fourth is the two-way binding. So I'm presenting a small demo here, means the small code snippet, which actually explains each and everything, each and every one form of binding. So the first line is the li tag, which actually says it is a string interpolation. So we have a hero property inside the component, and hero dot name is a value. So with the syntax for interpolation is you have to quote it between double curly braces. So this will actually print the hero dot name value. Now if we come to the second line, it is hero detail, and then you can see the square bracket. So the square bracket means the property binding. So this actually pass the value of selected hero from parent to child, from parent component to child component. So this is actually a property binding. On the third line, you can see again a li tag, which where we have written in the single bracket, small bracket, click, which is called the event binding, and inside that we have written a select hero, and we have passed the hero object to it. So what basically does is, on the class file, it searches for the select hero select hero method, and on click of any of the on that specific li tag, it actually redirects you to the logic written inside the select hero will be performed. uh, Now, the two-way binding on the fourth line. So if you observe, we have a square bracket and then a in the small brackets, and then we have ng model. So basically, if you see the second line and the third line, two-way binding is nothing but a property binding plus the event binding. So what it does is we have ng model, which is directive. So what is directive? So Angular templates are also dynamic templates, as I mentioned earlier. So when Angular renders them, it transforms the DOM according to the instructions given by the directives, right? So directives actually let know that what to perform and what to perform and how to perform. So with this ng model, when you change any of the data in hero.name property, if there is any change in data, you can directly get you have to handle that event, and you can easily get change that is done in the hero.name value. So yeah, another feature that is lazy loading, which is very important in Angular. So on the performance basis, lazy loading plays an important role. So let's say your Angular application has three modules, that is module 1, 2, and 3. And there are total 7 components as listed here. So component 1, 2, and 3 belongs to module 1. 4 and 5 belong to module 2, and 6 and 7 belong to module 3, right? So now, let's say on when I load my Angular application for the first time, the module 1 will be loaded by default. So I'm assuming that module 1 will be loaded by default. So if I am accessing module 1, 2, and 3, then module 2 and module 3 will never be invoked, will never come into the picture. But as soon as I let's say I invoked a route with which component 5 deals with. So component 5 is part of module 2. So at that time, when I am calling the component 5, the module 2 will be invoked at that point of time, and similar for the module 3 as well. So yeah, this is all what are the small the building blocks I've tried to cover. And yeah, that's all from my side. Thank you so much, OMG, for hosting me. And yeah, this is proving a very good event so far.
Thank you, Bratin. I'm sure your insights have helped our audience to go ahead with this part of web technologies. And for any questions or anything, I'm sure they'll reach out to you in your at your handles. Um,
Thank you so
to
much.
conclude DSC OMG now, we would love to thank the people without whom this wouldn't have been possible. Our very first thanks goes to the audience. And if it was not for this massive support that we've received from you over these 2 days and even before, we wouldn't have been tweeted by Google developers and Google Devs India. So this goes mainly to you and also to the people behind this presentations, every speaker, every person who's handling the backend. This one's for all of you. And definitely thank you to the 1,150 people of you, and in fact more, for subscribing to our YouTube channel and for being engrossed throughout these sessions. We love your contribution and part in this celebration, and we would also love to say that we have another series of events planned up. And tomorrow, especially for the machine learning and cloud track, we have two amazing Googlers. So, and again, amazing games as well, like we've had for 2 days consecutively. We would love to see you again. Until then, keep tweeting us with our handles, in our handles, and keep it trending. And we love that support, and it means a lot to us. With that, thank you. Have a good night.